Chapter 45. Do you know your crime? After examining Gulian for a moment, Veronica said coldly. Sylvia was stunned, thinking that she had misheard. She asked with a trembling mouth, Sister Veronica, are you serious? Gulian, he might have been misled too. No, this is my choice. The simple-minded Gulian decisively ignored Sylvia's good intentions. Good, very good. Veronica's voice was full of killing intent. Sylvia's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. She begged Dustless to give her face in hopes that Veronica would be merciful. She simply thought that this sister would be merciful. Who would have thought? You have brought this upon yourself. This is a capital offense. Veronica's tone was unshakable. She said in a deep voice, Gulian, as my confidant, did not play an exemplary role. Instead, he secretly contacted the enemy. His crime is punishable by death, but you have been with me for many years. Even if you have not made any contributions, you have worked hard. Take your own life as an apology. Veronica's voice was incomparably cold. Just as Dustless had predicted, Gulian would not be able to escape death no matter what. However, taking his own life was much more dignified than being executed. Take care of yourself from now on. It's getting late. Goodbye. Dustless only needed to hear the result. He stretched and got up to leave, leaving everyone with a view of his back. You can't be serious, right? Yak's mouth was wide open. She couldn't believe it even if she was beaten to death. Isn't this guy too cold? He killed him just like that. Even if it was a dog, after following its master for several years, they would have built a deep relationship with each other. Not to mention Gulian. He had contributed to Veronica's career and defeated many enemies. Now he had fallen to the end of taking his own life. In the evening, the news of Princess Veronica's confidant Gulian taking his own life spread. The entire Ansari Dragon Knight Academy was caught in the whirlpool of public opinion. No one knew the specific reason, but it could be considered as saving Gulian some face. Meow meow meow. In the quiet room there was a soft moan. Dustless, who was resting on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes. What kind of show is this? Dustless frowned as he stared at the beautiful woman sitting on top of him, ignoring the saliva-inducing curves. It's too much to disturb someone's rest. The person who came into view had exquisite facial features and was extremely beautiful. She had a figure and a face and long legs. She was impeccable in all aspects and she even knew how to act cute. She was unusually tall and looked somewhat similar to Yak. This was not the first time they had met the person sitting on Dustless's waist. Her name was Nobby. What a cold attitude. Nobby pouted angrily, but Dustless did not even look at her. This guy was actually AI's memory clone. He seemed to have some special feelings for Dustless and would often come out to pester him. If you have something to say, just say it. Dustless looked at Nobby and closed his eyes again. Nobby looked deeply at Dustless. After a long time she sighed and said unhappily, I'm afraid this is the last time I come out to harass you. Goodbye forever. As she spoke, tears fell from Nobby's eyes in disbelief. She seemed particularly sad and reluctant. Are you starting to put on a sad show? Seeing this, Dustless was speechless. He helplessly patted the girl's head. Can't you be a little more obedient? Don't play these little games all day. You're Aiku after 5 years. 5 years later she's still so childish. I'm telling the truth. Nobby squinted her eyes and enjoyed it for a moment. Then she pushed away Dustless's palm on her head and emphasized, I've decided to fuse with Aiku. They were originally the same person, so the fusion was naturally fate. Hearing this, Dustless's calm eyes rippled slightly. His bored eyes began to condense and emit bursts of light. Fusion? That's a pity. Aiku will probably reject it. There was suddenly another person in her body. Although the initiative and control of the body, including the thoughts, were still with Aiku, no one would be able to accept such a thing, right? You're right. When we were in the dragon workshop I talked to her about a similar topic, but Aiku rejected it. Nobby didn't mince her words. There was no need to hide this kind of thing. Even if Aiku rejected it, she would still forcibly fuse with Aiku because there were too many implications involved. It was even closely related to the future of the dragon race. What if I don't agree? Dustless asked. This seems to be between me and Aiku. You don't have the right to interfere. Even though she already knew that Dustless was overbearing and unreasonable, Nabi still retorted unhappily when she saw his condescending gaze. This has a lot to do with me. Don't forget, Aiku was born from absorbing my power. To a certain extent she's my child. Now that you're fusing with her, don't you know how I feel as a father? Dustless's expression was sharp and his eyes were sharp. He didn't seem to be joking. You're Aiku's father. Hearing this, Nabi's lips curled into a mischievous smile. Her body wrapped around Dustless like a snake and she asked in a soft and coquettish tone, what kind of father would do such a thing to his daughter? You insatiable brat, who gave you the courage? Dustless's mouth twitched. His face darkened as he asked, are you secretly observing me? Oh, I'm just observing Aiku. Nabi shrugged as if it had nothing to do with her. As for what kind of indescribable thing it was, looking at Dustless's angry and somewhat awkward expression, she knew it wasn't anything good. Chapter 46. I can't accept this. The Black Lancer struggled violently with his forelimbs. His hands were grasping at the air, the veins on his palms and the back of his hands were bulging, as if he wanted to strangle Dustless to death. Thinking about it carefully, you are indeed a little tragic. It was not easy for you to be resurrected and it hasn't even been a minute, right? You didn't even have time to take a few breaths of fresh air before you were killed. I should at least apologize to you. Dustless seemed to really understand the Lancer's pain, and his tone sounded very apologetic. However, it would have been better if he did not say anything. After he finished speaking, the Black Lancer was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was purplish red. He would not be grateful for Dustless's apology. No, it was not an apology at all. It was deliberately exposing his scars. I curse you to die a horrible death. The Black Lancer's eyes bulged outwards and his black eyeballs were bloodshot. His expression was like that of a demon who had fallen into hell. A guy like you should. Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, the Black Lancer's body dissipated. Who next? How do you plan to die? Dustless's gaze swept towards the Black Archer and said faintly, if I remember correctly, that move just now can only be used once a day. Next, what do you have to fight me? The Black Archer frowned and did not speak for a long time. In fact, he was depressed because this guy knew too much. Give up, Archer. With your strength you can't kill Dustless. Please accept reality. Tears flashed in Fiori's eyes. You're the only friend I have left. I don't want to lose you. I'm sorry, Fiori. The Black Archer did not address her as master at this time. He directly called her by her name and said from the perspective of a friend, even if I agree verbally, my body will involuntarily carry out the command incantation's command. You should know this. In that case I can only let you die. Dustless didn't hesitate. He decisively raised his thumb, and an energy ball containing strong spiritual pressure quickly appeared. As for the Black Side Archer with the command incantation's command, he picked up his bow again and aimed at Dustless. Just like Lancer, he was ordered to kill Dustless through a command curse. Before I leave, I want to say something. Black Archer's face remained calm. He could feel the power of Void Flash in Dustless's hand. Even if Dustless was perfectly resurrected and regained all his strength, it would still be a huge threat to him, let alone a mere heroic spirit. Lady Fiori, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please remember my name, Sharon. Black Archer finally smiled gently at Fiol. His handsome face was filled with gentleness. Even Dustless's expression softened. The clean and shallow smile was like a refreshing breeze, brushing away Fiori's sadness. Those clear eyes seemed to be able to speak. Not only Fiori but even Dustless, an outsider, understood the deep meaning of Karen's words. If Sharon could survive, the two of them would become close friends in the future. It's a pity that the world is so cruel. 9 out of 10 things are not satisfactory. Dustless's compassion quickly disappeared. The void flash in his hand was thrown out in a straight line, and the archer also shot out a dense number of arrows. Void flash. At this moment, Fiori could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes and they burst out. Boom, boom, boom. Void flash finally exploded on the archer's body. He disappeared on the spot and the space where he was also blasted into a large hole. He was instantly killed by an overwhelming force. In case Seek can't find us for revenge, let's stay here, Atlanta. While speaking, Dustless had already used wood release to build some houses. Understood. Atlanta nodded obediently, then quietly walked to Dustless's side and asked in a soft voice, "Lord Dustless, this child is quite pitiful. Her family is dead and she is the only one left. Why don't you take her in?" Atlanta was a kind-hearted person and she sympathized with Fiori's experience. "If she can accept it, I don't mind." Dustless waved his hand and he didn't care about this kind of thing at all. With light steps, Dustless walked into the wooden house to rest. Time flew and in the blink of an eye a few hours had passed. The sky gradually darkened and soon it was night. The night was full and the stars hanging high in the night sky were glowing. In this hot summer, even at night, it was as stuffy as being in a steamer. A few gusts of wind swept across the grassy plain, blowing on people's faces, and it was particularly comfortable. Why did this happen? Didn't I die? How did I suddenly come back to life? Or is everything that happened in front of me just a dream? Under the lush green tree, a golden-haired girl wearing medieval clothes and armor muttered to herself in a daze. She held a flag in her hand, which was painted with exquisite patterns that swayed in the night wind. The girl's beautiful eyes, which had been puzzled for a long time, suddenly lit up. Could it be that all of this is Lord? Lord, my ass, your Lord is not great to this point. He has already laid himself to rest. What right does he have to resurrect you? This abrupt sentence made the girl extremely angry because she was a devout believer and a saintess. The girl suddenly turned her head and looked towards the source of the voice. She didn't see anyone, but she angrily rebuked, "Where did this heathen come from? How dare you speak to the revered Lord?" Dustless. After seeing the person who came, the girl's beautiful eyes widened in an instant, and her rosy lips opened to the maximum limit. She was very surprised. "I haven't seen you for a while. You seem to have changed a lot, ruler." Dustless walked over with his hands behind his head. "No. You're no longer ruler now. The Holy Grail War is over for you. It's not too much to call you Jean, right?" This blonde girl was the ruler who willingly died in the hands of Dustless. In fact, ruler didn't want to be enemies with Dustless, but due to the rules of the Holy Grail War, she chose to die in the hands of Dustless in the end. "Could it be that you resurrected me?" Jean asked with a strange expression. This kind of unbelievable thing was impossible if it was someone else. But if it was Dustless, Jean still remembered Atlanta, who was resurrected by Dustless. Chapter 47. Xiao Jiwu's heart was filled with complex emotions. Like an overturned bottle of 5 different flavors: sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. "You should reflect on yourself." Dustless took a deep look at Xiao Jiwu before he turned around and left. But as soon as he left, an uninvited guest blocked his way. "Follow me." Mingyue Wu forcefully pulled Dustless's hand away. She used so much force that red marks appeared on her wrist. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Dustless didn't struggle as he allowed the girl to pull him. He studied Mingyue Wu's frozen expression. It was a rare moment of seriousness. "Did you find Summer of Woven Spots?" Dustless's face turned cold. If his previous interactions with Summer of Woven Spots were purely for fun, then this time he had crossed the line by infiltrating IS Academy with terrorists. Before, Dustless could turn a blind eye because of Woven Spots Qian, but this time that kid had committed a capital offense. "No." Mingyue Wu slowly shook her head before she said in a sinister tone, "If I catch that guy, I will make him regret living." Mingyue Wu's tone was filled with unprecedented hatred. Her only sister was attacked by Summer of Woven Spots and was severely injured. How could she not be angry? "You haven't forgotten what I said before, right?" Mingyue Wu's face was filled with worry. "About my sister's condition. Weren't you afraid that I would treat your sister as a mental patient? Now you know to come to me?" Dustless said in a sarcastic tone. Before, his warm face was stuck to Mingyue Wu's cold butt. "I was wrong. Is that not enough?" Feng Wu showed an aggrieved expression. She hugged Wu Chen's arm and acted coquettishly. Her tone was soft and her arms swayed in her embrace. Sometimes it would touch her high cleavage. Dustless's heart was in turmoil as he glanced at the IS Academy uniform that was propped up high. He muttered in his mind, "This kid is too developed. She probably has the potential to be a dairy cow in the future. Only this time, no next time." After some coaxing, Dustless finally agreed. In fact, he had a good impression of Mingyue Wu. In a quiet ward, Morzhizan was lying quietly. Her face was pale, her breathing was very weak, and her eyebrows were purple. It seemed that it was not a simple skin wound. As soon as he entered the ward, Dustless realized that Gengzan's injury was very serious because this was the ICU. There doesn't seem to be much of a problem. Dustless gave it a cursory glance and didn't find any clues. This is a big problem. Mingwu laughed bitterly inside. He gritted his teeth and explained, "My sister was seriously injured by those terrorists and was forced to eat poison." Really? Hearing this, Dustless's pupils rippled as he asked suspiciously, "You saw it?" Dustless opened the tensigan and saw a purple liquid flowing in the blood vessels of the hairpin, eroding her internal organs. This poison wasn't very fatal. It was a slow-acting virus, but it could be very dangerous over time. No. Mingyu shook his head and didn't say much. He took out his mobile phone and played a recording. "Your sister was poisoned by us. Don't try to save her. If you want to get the antidote, take Dustless's head and give it to us. Otherwise, just wait for death." "No wonder you hate Weaver Spot's first summer so much." Dustless was relieved. He instantly recognized this voice as Weaver Spot's first summer. But that kid is really good. He even knows how to poison people. Wu Chen praised impolitely, "You even know how to kill with a borrowed knife. Not bad." When a sunny and kind-hearted person falls into darkness, his heart will be more evil than anyone else. It's really true. You still praise him. Mingyu Wu rolled her eyes, stomped her feet, and stared at Dustless angrily and said angrily, "I caught that guy and beat him until his parents couldn't recognize him. That guy and Qiandong are orphans. I adopted them back then. They don't have parents." Dustless hugged his head, then looked at Mingyu Wu expectantly and asked, "Speaking of which, why didn't you take my head and ask for the antidote as he wanted?" "The point is I can't beat you," Mingyu Wu answered dejectedly. She was Dustless's disciple and they were not on the same level at all. "Can you cure my sister's illness or not?" Mingyu Wu looked at Dustless worriedly and said in a threatening and warning tone, "If you can't cure her, I might really do as Vega Summer asked. You just said that you're not my opponent and now you want to fall out with me?" Dustless rolled his eyes at Mingyu Wu then said indifferently, "Don't worry, leave it to me." Cure? Dustless naturally didn't have that ability, but he had other methods. "You can leave first." Dustless waved his hand, "I'm afraid your heart can't take my rough treatment." "Don't scare me, I've seen a lot of big scenes." Mingyu Wu refuted, then stared at Dustless who didn't seem to be moved at all. She had no choice but to leave. "If something goes wrong, you won't be able to be a man for the rest of your life." Mingyu Wu raised her fist and looked at Dustless warningly, then blushed slightly, "You can't do anything excessive to my sister while I'm away or I won't let you off." "Do something excessive?" Dustless had a strange expression and teased, "For example?" "Of course, you're not allowed to take advantage of the situation." Mingyu Wu responded seriously then said in a soft voice, "She's still young, if you really want to find someone to solve it you can find me." When she said the last few words Mingyu Wu's voice couldn't be heard at all. Although she gave everyone the impression that she was the cheerful and bold type, it was really difficult for a girl to say such embarrassing words. "Since you said so, I won't be polite when the time comes." Staring at the graceful curves, Dustless smiled naughtily. Chapter 48. It was normal for Leonhardt to have complaints previously. After all, he was the one and only king of the Devil Realm. Just because of Dustless's words he had to step down and get lost. This was 2F** king ridiculous. No matter how monstrous Wu Chen's strength was, at least Leonhardt had never seen it with his own eyes. This time, after experiencing it personally, he immediately understood the gap between them. The resentment in his heart towards Wu Chen also lessened a lot. A few minutes later, Kai woke up. When she saw Dustless, she immediately rushed over and could not help but burst into tears. Being betrayed by her family was indeed a heavy blow to a young girl who was not even 20 years old. After crying for half an hour, Kai finally fell asleep in Dustless's arms. After this incident, Dustless could feel that Kai had more trust in him. It was just like the saying, "A friend in need is a friend indeed." After carrying Kai back to her room to rest, Dustless turned around and left. On the way he bumped into Leah and Leonhardt. Seeing the two of them, Dustless said bluntly, "Kai said that she has no interest in the Underworld King's position. so Leonhardt will continue to be the Underworld King. Consider it as repayment for saving her life. Really? Leonhardt was extremely excited. There was actually someone in this world who voluntarily gave up the Underworld King's position? What a miracle. Dustless nodded gently. This was indeed what Kai said before. So the world is finally peaceful. Leah's little face showed a satisfied smile. She actually did not have the ambition to conquer the world. Everything was fine as long as everything was safe. However, Leah's beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of uneasiness when she suddenly thought of the people from the Pivotal Council who escaped. Those who escaped were all lunatics who would do anything to unify the underworld. They were forced into a desperate situation and would do anything crazy. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. An unprecedentedly violent explosion suddenly resounded throughout the underworld. The destructive shockwaves spread without limit. Wherever it went, all the buildings were turned into ashes. Crack 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 crack. Everyone immediately walked out of the room and looked up at the sky. There were cracks on the blue barrier. Something incredible has appeared. Can even shatter my barrier. Dustless had a look of surprise on his face. He looked towards the source of the tremors and saw that it was a huge magic array. This magic array exuded an ancient and desolate aura. It was filled with a murderous intent that wanted to destroy everything. When it descended on this continent, everyone shuddered as they felt the aura of death. Even powerhouses of Lionheart's caliber broke out in cold sweat as they stared at the large magic array with fear in their eyes. The heroic spirit king who commands all heroic spirits, demon god Chaos. Leonhardt clenched his fists and roared angrily. In order to defeat us, those old bastards from the Pivotal Council even used this trump card. Devil God. What a scary name. Dustless lazily placed his hands in his pockets, a strange light flashing in his eyes as he gazed at the behemoth slowly emerging from the magic array. You look so excited. Liao was speechless as she explained solemnly, Demon God Chaos will continue to summon heroic spirits. Even if we defeat him in the end, the demonic realm will eventually become a wasteland. You won't have that chance. Dustless's body suddenly floated over and flew out of the barrier as he quickly flew towards Demon God Chaos. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large number of light beams came from all directions as the destructive shockwaves cut through the void. The deafening sound was enough to tear a person's eardrums. Dustless did not evade. He faced the light beam and rushed out. Is that guy crazy? Isn't he afraid of being blown to pieces? Leonhardt was stunned. In his opinion, Dustless was courting death. Boom boom boom. The light beams came from all directions. The moment they came into contact with Dustless, there was a huge explosion that could destroy the sky. His body was blown to pieces and there was not even a trace of him left. However, it was useless. As a user of the glint fruit, Dustless's body was instantly restored. He was still charging forward fearlessly. Roar 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 roar. At the same time, Demon God Chaos had completely rushed out of the magic array. His huge body was like a demon, exuding an extremely evil aura of destruction. Behind him were a large number of purple worms that looked like enlarged versions of caterpillars. It was extremely disgusting. Roar roar roar. As if sensing Dustless's arrival, Demon God Chaos roared wildly as if he felt that he was being looked down upon by an ant and became angry out of humiliation. What's a mindless idiot like you trying to show off for? Dustless muttered to himself as if he was mocking the giant Demon God Chaos in front of him. Roar roar roar. Demon God Chaos seemed to understand Dustless's mockery and roared again. The purple tentacles behind him shot out like sharp blades. You're just an ant. Don't overestimate yourself. Dustless blinked slightly and his surging eye power began to surge. He focused his sight on the purple tentacles and shouted, Amaterasu. Boom boom boom. In an instant, a ball of black fire suddenly descended. It was as powerful as a natural disaster and surrounded the disgusting tentacles, burning them quickly. After burning the disgusting tentacles, the Amaterasu did not disappear. The vines moved forward along the purple tentacles, and the black fire finally engulfed every part of Demon God Chaos's body. A large ball of Amaterasu burned in the void and a scream resounded through the world. Ah! Demon God Chaos let out a miserable howl that contained extreme pain. Seeing you in so much pain, I'll free you. Dustless suddenly raised his thumb and aimed at demon god Chaos in the depths of the void. The majestic spiritual pressure in his body continued to burst out and filled the ball. Wang Su's flash. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 49. Capture her. Dustless swept a glance at Wildbone and no longer paid attention to her. She was already a turtle in a jar and no one could save her. The remaining monsters of Nuliang group looked at each other and surrounded Wildbone and the other monsters. The situation was reversed in an instant. Remember, I want her alive. Dustless turned around and left. Nuliang group was already in ruins and if he didn't rebuild it he would have to sleep soundly. This kind of thing was a piece of cake for Dustless. As a user of the wood style, how could this kind of trivial matter be a problem for him? Boom boom boom. The ground cracked open and all kinds of thick wood rose from the ground. All of them evolved into houses according to Dustless's will. In just a few minutes, a grander Nuliang group headquarters appeared in front of everyone. It was more majestic than before and was thousands of square meters in size. It was hard to imagine that it was built in just a few minutes. At the same time, Wildbone was also captured alive. As for the other cadres of Feathered Fox, they were all killed. The reason why she was kept alive was because she was relatively valuable. Sorry, Lord Dustless, one of them escaped. After that, Bull Demon ran over with an ashamed expression. He didn't even dare to lift his head. It's fine as long as it's not Wildbone and Violent Xitagarba. Dustless didn't care. The other monsters were all small fries. Only those two guys were considered to have some status. I'm really sorry, the one that escaped was Violent Xitagarba. Bull Demon's tone became even more ashamed. He lowered his head and looked like he was too ashamed to show his face. Hearing this, Dustless turned to look at Bull Demon. After a while he said, "It's fine if he escaped. He probably tipped off Feathered Fox." "Then what should we do next?" Bull Demon asked carefully. He was really afraid that Dustless would flip out if Violent Xitagarba escaped. "Tomorrow morning we will immediately rush to the capital." At this moment in the capital the flames of war were raging. The Flower Kiyuan family was retreating. There was no need for Feathered Fox to do it herself. The monsters she brought were enough to easily annihilate the Flower Kiyuan family. Especially after the demons in the wilderness submitted to the Feathered Fox, her strength increased by several levels. The Hua Kaiyuan family was no match for her at all. Their main camp was taken over by the Feathered Fox's subordinates. At this moment, in a barren mountain far away from the capital, the surviving Hua Kaiyuan clan was temporarily living there. Speaking of which, it was laughable that the world-famous Hua Kaiyuan clan had been chased out of the capital by the demons. They had no choice but to hide in the deep mountains and forests. But the current situation was like this. Feathered Fox's minions were too strong. She didn't even need to do it herself. Her minions were like fierce tigers, beating up the Flower Kiyuan family. In the mountains there were countless abandoned caves. The members of the Flower Kiyuan family were hiding in them. The once prosperous Flower Kiyuan family had completely fallen. There were only a few dozen of them left. The rest had all died in battle. More than half of the capital had been destroyed because of this war. It was enough to see how tragic this war was. There were countless casualties. Now the capital had become a paradise for monsters. When will that guy come to the capital? Flower Kiyuan Yulua stood outside a cave and looked at the distant sky. It was pitch black there. Raging demonic aura rushed into the sky. It was the capital. Ayaya. Little Yulua, you seem to have a special liking for that monster. How strange. As a Onmyoji, the Flower Kiyuan family has begun to rely on a monster. A strange voice came from behind. Flower Kiyuan Yulua gently turned her head. The person who entered her sight was Flower Kiyuan Xian, who was wearing a white Taoist robe. He had died 400 years ago. Now that he was able to see the light of day again, he was completely relying on the army destroyer used by Flower Kiyuan Yulua. It's not that I have a special liking for that guy. I hate that hooligan very much. Flower Kiyuan Yulua's little mouth gently rose, then helplessly said, "But other than him, who else can we rely on? Now the capital is already in chaos." What Yulua said is correct. Although I also hate that guy, but we can only rely on that Dustless. If we only rely on our Flower Keyuan family, we will be done for. Long Yi, who was leaning on a rock, had a gloomy expression. If they wanted to defeat Feathered Fox, there were two important things: Army Destroyer and Amikihimaru. But Amikihimaru had already been destroyed by Dustless, so they could only rely on him. Kyoto. After the expulsion of Flower Keyuan family, this place had already become a hell on earth. Humans were cruelly killed or directly eaten by demons. In a certain mansion in Kyoto, a large number of demons gathered here. This was the former headquarters of Flower Keyuan family. The cadres here were all the subordinates of Feathered Fox. Bang 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 bang. Sitting at the head of the table, Feathered Fox, who had always been elegant and calm, unexpectedly smashed the jade table in front of her into pieces. Her pale cheeks were filled with hostility. Kwanggu was caught. Feathered Fox tightly clenched her little hand. It seemed as if her bones were about to burst. All the demons looked at each other in dismay. Everyone was as quiet as cicadas in winter. They didn't even dare to breathe. They knew that Feathered Fox was really enraged. They couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Dustless. If other people died, Feathered Fox might not even look at them. But Kwanggu was different. Feathered Fox even treated him as her younger sister. Both of them had a deep sisterly relationship. If Kwanggu was caught, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he had caused a great disaster. Chapter 50. In Dustless's view, if you have to find a peerless person, there is no doubt that it is definitely Uchiha Itachi. But then again, Tsunade turned her head and looked at Dustless with curiosity in her eyes and asked, "You and that old man reached a secret agreement. What did that old man have to impress you?" Tsunade's words immediately attracted the attention of Jiraiya and Orochimaru, and they turned their heads and looked at Dustless with great interest on their faces. "Since you know, don't ask more." Glancing at Tsunade, Dustless rolled his eyes and ruthlessly broke Tsunade's fantasy. He turned his head and looked straight ahead. "You." Hearing this, Tsunade's mouth suddenly twitched and her eyes were burning with flames. She glanced at Dustless fiercely and turned her head angrily. She inevitably cursed Dustless in her heart. "This has nothing to do with you," Dustless said coldly to Tsunade. Sandame's chip is naturally the Manjikyu Sharingan with Uchiha Kagami. The premise for the birth of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is the transplant of a relative's Manjikyu Sharingan. Although Uchiha Kagami is also an Uchiha, he has nothing to do with Dustless, and transplanting his Manjikyu Sharingan will definitely cause rejection. "Stop, something is wrong here." At this moment, Orochimaru suddenly shouted, awakening Dustless from his contemplation. Dustless suddenly froze and subconsciously looked at Orochimaru with a dignified face. The scene in front of him was quite strange. Whether it was Orochimaru, Jiraiya, or Tsunade, all three of them were cautious and vigilant, and they were looking at the surrounding environment from the corner of their eyes. Dustless was confused and didn't know what was going on. "Haven't you noticed yet? We've been surrounded," Jiraiya said with a gloomy face. His eyes were full of murderous intent. He squinted his eyes and emitted a cold light. It was extremely terrifying. The murderous intent all over his body spread out like a flood. The scene suddenly became extremely oppressive. Dustless lifted his gaze and spread it forward meticulously. He swept past all the substances in the eyeball, but his face was still filled with confusion. "Are you really a Kage-level powerhouse? Maybe your strength is like that, but how could Tsunade let go of such a good opportunity?" She was the first to attack Dustless with a face full of contempt and ridicule. Seeing that Tsunade was attacking Dustless, Orochimaru frowned and looked at her with dissatisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Now is not the time to joke around. Recently it hasn't rained here for a long time. It's very dry." Orochimaru's eyes looked around him as he spoke in an unusually indifferent manner. Immediately, the corners of his mouth curled into a dense sneer. At a glance, the surrounding land and mountains appeared to be in a withered state. The ground was even covered with sinister cracks. In such a dry and hot environment, there was indeed a puddle of water in front of them. "I'm sorry, this is my negligence." Dustless smiled awkwardly. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. He scolded himself for not being tempered enough. He wasn't as experienced as Orochimaru. After all, Dustless didn't even go to the shinobi school. Except for his strength, he didn't know anything about shinobi. Staring at the scattered water stains in front of him, Orochimaru smiled coldly. His pale face was full of murderous intent, like an Asura from hell. Tsuke, Orochimaru is worthy of being one of the Sannin. His insight is really extraordinary. A cold laughter suddenly sounded, accompanied by the sound of water droplets flowing. He suddenly looked up and saw that the large water stains in front of him were all flowing rapidly. In an instant, hundreds of figures appeared. The Mist Village? Looking at the group of figures in front of him, Dustless had doubts in his heart. He frowned unconsciously. If he remembered correctly, the battle with the mist was in the future. Don't you know how to destroy the plot? Staring at the fog that suddenly appeared inexplicably in front of him, Wuxian was speechless. He didn't remember that the so-called plot had been shattered by him, a professional plot destroyer. Hey guys. Seems like you're going to die. Orochimaru smiled cruelly as the wrinkles in the corner of his eyes kept twitching. He had already sentenced the mist to death in his heart. Orochimaru sneered again and again. The Mizukage was too naive and ignorant to think that he could defeat them with a group of weaklings. The 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist? Jiraiya was surprised as he looked at the 7 leading figures. The 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist were quite famous in the ninja world, but their old faces quickly turned cold. Aside from Dustless, the Sannin and the 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist weren't in the same dimension. The former could crush the latter even if they had the advantage in numbers. Scram if you don't want to die before I decide to kill you. Jiraiya stepped forward and stared at the mist ninjas. Numbers were nothing in front of absolute strength. Humph. One of the 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist also stepped forward and looked at Jiraiya with murderous intent. He looked at Jiraiya, who was much shorter than him, and sneered. Using the blood and lives of the Sannin as stepping stones to become famous, it's best. Dustless looked at the burly man who had spoken and ignored him. However, the young man beside the Watermelon Mountain River Ghost had attracted Dustless's attention. He had a shark face and a ferocious expression. He looked quite young and tall. He was much taller than the malnourished Dustless. Especially his beast-like eyes. No one dared to look down on him. Kisame, this is interesting. With a faint smile on his face, Dustless looked back and recognized the young man at a glance. He was the only one in the world who looked like a shark. Since you want to die so much, I will reluctantly send you to heaven. With a ferocious smile, Orochimaru pounced forward. His snake eyes were full of killing intent as he rushed straight towards the pufferfish ghost. Seeing this, Jiraiya and Tsunade also rushed toward the mist village with murderous intent. Chapter 51. A hint of struggle flashed across Isuna's pretty face. Over the past few months, she felt that her soul had been corrupted by Gengo Aoi. Wait a moment. Isuna had no choice but to follow Gengo Aoi's instructions and leave. If she refused, this old man would beat her up again and humiliate her. The wise doctor in the past had gradually been driven crazy by Dustless. Sometimes he had a bad temper and was no different from a mad dog, biting whoever he saw. You will be obedient. Gengo Aoi said with a fake smile, like a demon that could speak. The Yujin wanderer felt his hair stand on end. He felt that this old man was a monster in human skin. After a while, the unconscious man and woman were brought over by Isuna. They don't deserve to be with me. I knocked them both out. The moment the Yujin wanderer saw the two of them, his pupils suddenly shrank and he shouted anxiously, Father, Mother. You are despicable scum. Cut the crap. Gengo Aoi glanced at the Yujin wanderer coldly and urged, Call Shifeng and ask her to kill Dustless. Otherwise I will break your parents' legs first. You better cooperate. As soon as he finished speaking, Gengo Aoi ran over and kicked the Yujin wanderer's father in the stomach, causing him to wail in pain. Don't hurt them. I agree to your conditions. Forced to make a choice, the Yujin wanderer compromised in despair. There was no other way. How could he watch his parents be killed? That was absolutely impossible. Time flew and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During this period of time, everything was calm and tranquil as usual. However, Wuxian noticed that someone had changed. Shifeng, who was usually meticulous in his work, had become absent-minded. He was often absent-minded in class and looked absent-minded. In his impression, Shifeng was meticulous and serious in everything she did. On this day, Shifeng came to take care of Lucy as usual. Perhaps it was because they were the same kind, but Lucy was very close to Shifeng. After all, they were both legendary Pandora. Perhaps there was a resonance in their souls. The usually cold Lucy would occasionally laugh like a silver bell. "Teacher Dustless, I want to take Lucy out for a walk today," Shifeng said to Dustless abruptly after helping Lucy put on her clothes. "Go for a walk? Can't we do it in school?" Dustless, who was reading on the sofa, raised his eyebrows and hesitated. If a legendary Pandora went berserk, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Forget it. Go go go. Remember to be careful." Wuxian originally wanted to refuse, but when he saw Lucy looking at him with an expectant look, his heart softened in the end. Upon hearing Dustless's agreement, Lucy immediately revealed a bright smile that was as warm as the sun. "Speaking of which, you seem to be a little absent-minded recently. You're also in a daze during class, Shifeng." Dustless put down his book and asked Shifeng, "Is it because of that reaper of yours?" "I've heard about him from Elizabeth. He hasn't returned to class yet. If there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. After all, you helped me solve Lucy's problem." As expected, I can't hide anything from Teacher Dustless. Shifeng sighed inwardly and shook her head to indicate that she wasn't. Only her expression was a little stiff. "Something happened at home. My parents' health is getting worse." Shifeng found a reason to deal with it. Jengo Aoki had threatened her to kill Dustless. To be honest, she couldn't do it. Shifeng thought of other strategies to solve the problem. "I'll go to your house to take a look. I have a unique understanding of medical skills." Dustless's sudden recommendation caught Shifeng off guard. She hurriedly refused. "It's just a common cold. I'll be fine after taking some medicine." "Is that so? Then send my regards to your parents. I hope they can recover soon. It's getting colder now. More and more people are catching colds." Dustless didn't talk nonsense. If he continued, it would only make things worse. However, a sharp glint flashed in his eyes. The more Shifeng said this, the more it meant that there was a big problem. After about half an hour, Shifeng and Lucy finished their meal. They changed their clothes and went out. They were beauties with good figures. Therefore, when they went out, they attracted a lot of attention. Shifeng was fine, but she was surprised when she saw Lucy. During this period, Dustless didn't stay idle. He went to the third year to find Elizabeth, but she wasn't there. He had no choice but to come to the girls' dormitory. As soon as Dustless appeared, it caused a sensation. Many girls rushed to surround him. Dustless, who was squeezed in the crowd, was even molested. In the end, he had to use invisible clone to deal with it. These years, the students are getting crazier. I thought that the seniors would be more rational. I didn't expect them to be the ones who can't control themselves. Dustless, who escaped from the disaster, hid under the shade of a tree and gasped. If he left later, his clothes would have been torn apart. "Your embarrassed look is really interesting. I didn't expect you to have such a cute side. Turns out that you're not invincible. You didn't run away from a group of female students. How funny, huh?" Suddenly, a figure appeared in his eyes. After seeing this person, Dustless frowned slightly. Lana Lin Qin. Facing the girl's ridicule, Dustless's eyes were calm. He wasn't angry at all. "Those are my students. Have you ever seen a teacher fight with her students? Besides, if they treat me like that, it means that I'm very popular. If you think that you can anger me by saying that, you're too funny, Lana." Chapter 52. The small amount of information obtained from the bundle of Shao indicated that this was an organization established during the Second World War. It didn't belong to any country, nor did it have any religious beliefs. No one even knew where it originated from. As for the organization's internal scale, purpose and personnel, this series of secrets was even more unknown. Inside the IS Academy, Dustless sat in his office. There was a thick stack of documents on the table in front of him. This was the first batch of documents that had been delivered. The content was almost all reports on the IS industry. However, the useful information was pitifully little or none. Currently, one thing was certain. This organization was very jealous of the advanced IS and even wanted to take it for themselves. According to the news from the police, during the autopsy, the IS on Weaver Ban was gone. It was probably taken by the organization. Dustless looked up blankly and murmured, That idiot is so naive. The white system was actually his protection. Now that the white system is in their hands for the terrorists, Weaver Band has no value. Therefore it was no big deal to kill him. How's the preparation for the thing I asked you to do? Dustless's eyes fell on the head of the girl on the sofa. She laid there lazily. Perhaps because it was too hot, her collar was casually open, and the huge jade ball was about to jump out. However, with the terrorists bothering him, Dustless really didn't have the mood to appreciate this beautiful scene. I've prepared everything. Don't worry. Yunwu naughtily stuck out her tongue and winked at Dustless. Then her face showed a rare look of worry. But are you serious? Now the whole world is in an uproar. Of course. Dustless gently nodded and immediately frowned. It's just an IS competition. Is it as exaggerated as you say it is? If it was a normal IS competition, it would definitely not attract attention. However, the prize for the final winner is too rich. Not to mention others, even I am tempted. She pouted and narrowed her beautiful eyes. The winner is actually a 4th-generation machine personally built by Dr. Xiao Zhiji. How many people are not tempted? This is only part of the reward. Dustless smiled mysteriously. He opened the drawer and placed some blueprints on the table. Take a look. Although the 4th-generation console is good, it's not as important as these things. It's just a few pieces of paper. What's so strange about it? Even more, Mingwu scoffed. However, out of curiosity he still picked it up and took a look. Before she had time to read the content, she only saw a few eye-catching words on the design page. Her expression instantly froze and her lips opened and closed several times. In the end, she exclaimed in shock, "TTE." Hearing this, Dustless held his head with both hands and teased, "Since when did the eloquent you become a stutterer? Isn't it just the 5th-generation IS design? Look at how shocked you are. Isn't it just the 5th-generation design? Don't you know what this means?" Hearing this, even more panicked. This guy didn't know the hunger of a starving man. Some countries in the world were still in the 3rd generation of IS. Even countries like France were still in the 2nd generation. The 4th generation reward for this IS competition was already ridiculous enough. Now even the 5th generation design was given out. Are you saying that this is also the reward for this competition? He shook his head vigorously and forced himself to calm down. He asked suspiciously, "The reward this time is too generous. Once the news gets out, I'm afraid it will attract the attention of criminals. At that time the losses will outweigh the gains. I want the outside world to go crazy." Dustless smiled coldly and said, "If they want to destroy people, the ancestors will go crazy. The current target of the vanquished nation machine industry is all kinds of advanced IS. If they know that I gave out the 4th generation and 5th generation IS designs as the reward, the poisonous snakes hiding in the dark will definitely jump out. In front of this huge bait, I don't believe they can turn a blind eye." For a mere Baishurjia, the terrorists used all their tricks. With the 4th generation and 5th generation design, the terrorists of the vanquished nation machine industry would definitely not be able to resist. Lure the snake out of its hole? Even more immediately understood Dustless's intention. Although the plan was not bad, the risk was not small. IS Academy would definitely become the target. "Don't worry, you are the president of the student council. Just do as I say." Dustless comforted him with confidence. "Let's set the time for 7 days later. No matter what, I'm still against giving out the 5th generation IS design. If it doesn't work, we can find a fake one." Even more still insisted on his opinion. If it really falls into the hands of the terrorists, it might change the world. Even more loudly, even more seriously looked at Dustless. "You don't have to worry about this." Dustless said slowly, "The 5th generation design is only a part. This was given to me by Shu. Even that guy couldn't draw out the entire design. Do you think other people can?" Even Moore's heart skipped a beat. He thought for a bit, changed his mind and silently nodded in agreement. Indeed, if the bundle of Xiao, the pioneer of IS, couldn't design something, it was even more impossible for others to do so. Although the design in front of him was real, it was a useless piece of paper to some extent because it was impossible to create with the current technology of mankind. If it was possible, Xiao would have created it a long time ago and used Dustless as a test subject. "Let's see how long you can endure." Dustless's dark eyes flashed with a mysterious light. Just as even more said, this was inviting the wolf into the house. Chapter 53. Is that so? Your judgment is very wise. Think so too. Dustless chuckled. Just as Ox Ghost said, capturing that female fox to warm the bed was too flattering for her. Seems that there is still one alive. Looking from afar, there was actually a figure struggling. His whole body was pierced through like a hornet's nest and blood was constantly flowing out. The person in front, quickly report your name. A deafening sound came from afar. With this shout, everyone including Dustless was stupefied. Looking around, it was the demon leader called Hidden Master by. Ungrateful guy, how can he know the name of Master Dustless? Ox Ghost's eyes flashed with cold light. With a clang sound he pulled out his katana. I will deal with that guy. Wait. Dustless's cheeks showed a faint smile. This guy is very principled. He has to wait until I report my name. I think he is quite cute. Cute? Ox Ghost was speechless. He couldn't understand Dustless's thinking at all. The other party was the cadre of Feathered Fox. He was quite powerful and commanded nearly 10,000 demons. How could this be called cute? Go and capture him alive. Dustless ordered Ox Ghost. The latter just nodded slightly. Hidden Master Bai's whole body was pierced through by the Yasakani no Magatama, just now. Now he didn't have the energy to deal with Ox Ghost, so he was captured alive in just a few rounds and brought to Dustless. This guy was covered in blood and his flesh was badly mutilated. Looking carefully, there were dozens of holes in his wounds, but even so, Hidden Master Bai still didn't retreat and was very loyal, which made Dustless look at him in a new light. You're very brave. It is Feathered Fox's blessing to have a subordinate like you. After seeing Hidden Master Bai, Dustless said slowly, Don't you want to know my name? My name is Dustless. Dustless? Although he had heard of this name a long time ago, Hidden Master Bai was still shocked. He asked in surprise, You're the one who killed Devilchild Pill and captured Kwangu? Other than Lord Dustless, who else would have such courage? Ox Ghost said disdainfully. On the other hand, Dustless looked at Ghost Bull with a strange look. This kid was getting better at bootlicking. Lord Feathered Fox said that if any demons encounter Dustless, we are to pass on a message. Hidden Lord Bai looked up at Dustless and said, You better not let anything happen to Wild Bone or he'll eat you alive. How scary. How can a woman like her warm my bed? I should just stomp her to death. Dustless pretended to be scared. Right, you can go now. Dustless waved his hand. The sudden decision made Ghost Ox and Hidden Master Bai stunned. Lord Dustless, are you going to let this guy go? Ghost Ox dug his ears, thinking that he had misheard. This guy was an enemy, a loyal follower of Feathered Fox. You must be joking. Hidden Master Bai also looked at Dustless in disbelief. Don't misunderstand. I just think you're cute. Moreover, Feathered Fox will lose no matter what. You won't change anything. Dustless replied calmly, It's not that Feathered Fox is weak. Her only fatal weakness is that she chose the wrong enemy. Are you looking down on me? Hidden Master Bai looked at Dustless unhappily. His whole body was wreaking havoc. He tried to teach this guy a lesson, but a burning pain spread all over his body. The Yasakani no Magatama had already pierced through Hidden Master Bai's body. However, this kid was not destined to die yet. Some of his important organs were not damaged. So what if I look down on you? Do you think you're qualified to be compared with Lord Dustless? Ghost Ox asked coldly. This guy was too insensible. Forgive this kid, and he still didn't know how to be grateful. If there's nothing else, I'll throw you down. This spaceship is too small to accommodate you. Dustless stood up and walked over slowly. I still have something to say. Hidden Master Bai quickly said, I heard that Feathered Fox captured Blossoming School's Yulua alive. She also said that if you dare to mess around with Wild Bone, she will deal with Blossoming School's Yulua in the same way. Hearing this, Dustless's expression was rather strange. He couldn't help but mutter, If I sleep with that kid called Wild Bone, does Feathered Fox plan to do the same? But does she have the ability to do so? Hidden Master Bai and Ghost Ox's cheeks twitched. If Dustless played like this, Feathered Fox really couldn't take revenge. I'll be back. After taking a deep look at Dustless, Hidden Master Bai jumped down from the spaceship. Lord Dustless, what should we do next? Ghost Ox asked. He knew that Blossoming School's Yulua and Dustless's relationship was not bad. What else can we do? This time, let's be the savior and destroy the capital. Dustless looked at the dark sky in the distance. It was the direction of the capital. Demon Chi was soaring to the sky. Even the sky had turned dark. The dark clouds were oppressive, penetrating the endless despair. A team of a few hundred demons wanted to destroy Feathered Fox, who occupied the entire capital. It sounded like a fool's dream. After all, after the demons from the distant wilderness joined Feathered Fox, they occupied the entire capital. The number of demons under Feathered Fox's command reached a terrifying number of hundreds of thousands. Even at the peak of Nuliang Group, there were only tens of thousands of demons. In terms of numbers, it was 10 times more than Nuliang Group. Not to mention the battle, the most basic data was enough to make people despair. However, after witnessing Dustless's rage, Ghost Ox and the others' confidence skyrocketed. After all, he had summoned an army of 10 trillion undead. Even if he didn't reach this number, he could still completely crush Feathered Fox's underlings. Chapter 54. These guys are so strong. Who are they? Elizabeth stood up with difficulty. Her body was about to fall apart and she did not have the energy to fight anymore. These people were too strong and their strength was overwhelming. Her beautiful eyes stared at the people approaching her. This was the first time in her life that she tasted despair. These mysterious people of unknown origins, just one of them was already too much for her to handle. If they were to gang up on her, Elizabeth would be beaten up badly. I've never heard of them before. Elizabeth's usually wise eyes were filled with confusion. If these mysterious people were to be exposed, they would definitely rewrite the world's Pandora rankings. If it was Dustless, he would definitely be able to recognize that these people were Sakura's teammates from the Heaven Court, as well as the candidates for the Valkyrie project. Who are you guys? Wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth, Elizabeth gritted her teeth and asked, Who gave you the order to brazenly invade the Seeger Academy? You don't have the right to know. One of the Valkyrie coldly refused to answer. In short, everyone who is related to Wuxian is our target and must be killed. Regardless of whether their relationship is good or bad, they must be executed. For example, if you want to hate someone, go to hell and hate that guy for offending someone he shouldn't have offended. Hearing this, Elizabeth's face turned pale. It turned out that she was not the only one who had suffered misfortune. For example, Chatalisa was probably doomed as well. These words are really scary. Anyone who is close to me, regardless of whether they are friends or enemies, must be killed. This is indeed the style of that old man Aoi Django. A lazy voice suddenly sounded and the Valkyries frowned. Only Elizabeth felt like she had broken out of a cage. She was very familiar with this voice and knew that it was Dustless. You're that Dustless? The Valkyrie with glasses asked and then took the initiative to introduce herself. I'm Franca Portia and they are... I'm not interested in listening to your self-introduction. Dustless's face was filled with solemnity as he spat out a bone-chilling breath. Get lost before I'm really angry. Take that Heaven Court Sakura with you. Remember, get lost far away and don't appear in my sight. Teacher Dustless, you... These words immediately caused Elizabeth to be astonished. He found it hard to believe. In her impression, Dustless was rarely so serious, especially when he flipped out at girls. Right now it was as if he was a different person. What did you say? The Valkyries were furious and looked at Dustless with resentment. They were used to being high and mighty. Talking to Dustless was already showing them mercy. This bastard actually told them to scram. He was simply too arrogant. Stay away, Elizabeth. Dustless stood in front of Elizabeth and said straightforwardly, There may be a lot of noise later. It won't be good if it affects you. Run for your life. I understand. Elizabeth nodded obediently and quickly stood up to leave. As she jogged away, she did not forget to turn her head to look at Dustless. He was especially scary in this state. Elizabeth even had a feeling that the usually gentle teacher was really angry now. Maybe it's because of Chatalisa. Elizabeth guessed. Previously, the Valkyries had said that anyone related to Dustless, good or bad, would be wiped out. Obviously, Chatalisa and her sister, Violet, were also the Valkyries' prey. That was why Dustless had shown such a scary expression. The few of you will die a horrible death. Dustless's eyes were bloodshot. In a hoarse voice he said, I gave you a chance to escape but you didn't cherish it. Then all of you will die here. Watch your tone, you bastard. One of the Valkyries angrily glared at Dustless. Her name was Kristen Evra and she came from England. She had a bad temper to begin with, and after being repeatedly looked down upon by Dustless, she couldn't hold back her anger and swooped down. Her speed was so fast that it was fleeting. Seeing this, Dustless gently raised his right foot. Murderous aura burst out of his body, and the light on his foot gathered as he kicked out. Lightspeed kick. The speed of light was so fast that Kristen Evra did not even have time to react before she was engulfed by the destructive light. Boom, boom, boom. Blazing flames burst out of the girl's body. Her flesh and blood were instantly burned to ashes and she died on the spot. The flames spread and the void boiled, burning everything around her. What a vicious move. The other Valkyries' expressions changed drastically. Realizing the danger, they hurriedly retreated. Not to mention being kicked, just the flames alone were enough to burn them to death. If they tried to get close, they would definitely meet a tragic end. The fate of Kristen Evra, who was swallowed by the fireball, was self-evident. She was afraid that not even her bones were left. She was kicked to explode by Dustless. Not even the remains of her body were left. Everything was incinerated. You bastard. Their good sister was instantly killed by Dustless, and the other Valkyries were furious. They gritted their teeth and wanted nothing more than to kill Dustless immediately. You all have this expression of hatred. Seems that you have to die. You have been brainwashed by Zhou Xian too deeply. There is no saving you. When it was time to destroy flowers, Dustless would not be merciful. These people were loyal to Zhou Xian, and if he let them go they would definitely seek revenge on Shataraza and the others. At that time they would definitely cause a lot of trouble. It was better to eliminate them now. Heavenly Hand. The eye power of Rinnegan Sharingan was launched, and Wuxian disappeared silently, crossing layers of space, and appeared behind Valkyrie like a ghost with a cold face. Chapter 55. What should we do? Red Rider looked at Sieg and asked, Now there are only 2 of us left. Sieg's eyes reddened as he thought of the Black Rider who died tragically. The way he looked at Dustless became exceptionally hostile and bloodshot. What else can we do? Of course we have to die together. This guy killed my best friend and I can't forgive him. Althofo, right? Dustless also understood the conflict between the two. Although that guy was indeed killed by Atlanta, I think it's still necessary to clarify some things. First of all, Dustless cleared his throat and explained, Althofo was dissatisfied with the Black Lancer's order and was tired of it. He had nothing to do with this Holy Grail war, so he deliberately died in the hands of Atlanta. Sieg's eyes flickered when he heard the words and he looked a little surprised. He died on his own. He didn't know about this. But, no matter what, you killed him. This is a fact. Don't try to quibble, Sieg gritted his teeth and said. I don't intend to quibble with you. If you want revenge, just come. But I have to remind you that you can't do anything by yourself. You're just a clone who has been blessed by the gods. Even if you had 10 lives, you wouldn't be able to overturn the heavens, let alone someone like you. Dustless attacked harshly and at the same time he stared at Red Rider with glowing eyes. Don't look down on me. Sieg's handsome face suddenly twisted. He wanted to refute but he couldn't speak. After all, Dustless was indeed too strong. Me alone? Are you blind? I still have Rid. Poochie. A bright red head rolled in front of Sieg. His pupils instantly dilated. This bloody head belonged to Rider. At the moment of his death, his eyes were still open, full of unwillingness. He was a hero with high divinity, but how did he die unknowingly? He didn't even have the time to react. He was instantly killed by Dustless. Now, it shouldn't be a problem to say that you're alone, right? Dustless asked with a chuckle. The heaven-gathering cloud sword in his hand was still dripping with blood. One of his eyes turned into Rinnegan. Just now he used the power of Heavenly Hand to appear behind the Red Rider and killed him. You're just a clone. You should be thanking your luck for being able to have the last laugh. Of course it's all because of that damned protagonist aura. But you're not satisfied with this and actually want to challenge me. You reap what you sow. You have to bear the karma that you've buried yourself. Dustless slowly walked forward with the sky cluster cloud sword in hand. Every time he took a step forward, Sieg would become extremely nervous and involuntarily take a few steps back. "I'm not afraid of you." Sieg let out a long roar, and at the same time his body erupted with a burst of red light, and an astonishing magic power burst out from his body. "There's such a magic power." Mordred was slightly shocked. He was very surprised. It was already unprecedented for a clone to have such a huge magic power like a heroic spirit. When the magic power dissipated, Sieg also underwent a tremendous change. He had already turned into the original black saber Sieg Fei. "Let Dustless deal with the rest." Artoria elegantly walked to Mordred's side. The latter looked at her absent-mindedly, staring at the face that was so close to him. It was so unreal, but all of this was real. Mordred's heart was filled with mixed feelings. In the past, Mordred wielded a butcher's knife against Artoria. In the end, both of them fell. Right now, Mordred's heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Father." After the corner of his mouth twitched for a while, Mordred finally opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "Maybe you were right back then. I'm not suitable to be a king. At the beginning of this Holy Grail War, I met my master lion Jie. He was very outstanding and he taught me a lot of things. I'm very grateful to him. In this life, most people don't get what they want. I'm already very satisfied to be able to fly like a bird on the battlefield and follow my father's back closely. As for becoming a king, this road is too difficult and lonely. It's not suitable for me." Mordred seemed to be enlightened. He lowered his head and said the truest thoughts in his heart. "You," Mordred looked at Artoria nervously and asked very anxiously, "Father, you must hate me very much, right?" It was normal for Mordred to think so. If it weren't for her, Artoria wouldn't have died and Britain might not have been destroyed. Everything was because of her. However, what father would hate his own child? Artoria responded with a smile, and then did something that made Mordred stunned. She took a step forward and rubbed Mordred's golden hair with her little hand. As she rubbed, she muttered, "No wonder Wu Chen, that fellow, always likes to rub other people's heads. This feels really good." "You?" Mordred was stunned. Her eyes were wide open. Was this still the mature, steady and serious King Arthur? Could it be that Dustless is trying to fool me with a fake? Mordred even had such a thought in her mind, but she quickly shook her head and denied it. Even though she was in the body of a heroic spirit, she could still feel the blood connection. The Artoria in front of her was her father. Chapter 56. If Sakura was smart, she would definitely learn her lesson after this incident. She would not dare to take revenge on Dustless in the future. It was not a bad thing to live in seclusion. If she came to challenge him again, she would be courting death. At that time, Dustless would definitely make her understand how foolish it was to live. "Isn't Teacher Dustless looking for Shifeng?" Elizabeth, who was being hugged by Dustless, couldn't help but ask. It was so awkward that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. She had no choice but to find a topic to divert attention. "Don't worry. I left special spatial coordinates on them. As long as they meet Zhengou, I will sense it and capture them all." A cold glint flashed in Dustless's eyes. At the end of the day, he still had to thank Zhengou for this incident. If it weren't for him, Dustless might not have been able to find the old man even if he spent more time. It was best that Zhengou was willing to jump out himself. At the same time, Shifeng brought Lucy to the agreed meeting place. Zhengou's initial condition was for Shifeng to assassinate Dustless, but Shifeng wasn't willing to do so. After some bargaining, Zhengou accepted Shifeng's condition of sending Lucy back. They even agreed on a meeting place. This was an abandoned factory far away from the city center. It was in the wilderness and no one cared about it. It was a paradise for flying insects and beasts. "Where's he?" Shifeng and Lucy stood together. The old man in front of them was stooped and his eyes were sunken. His skin was like the bark of an old tree and his face was full of deep wrinkles. This person was Zhengou. During this period of time when he was going against Dustless, he did not eat or drink well and had aged a lot. In addition, he was already old and his body was getting weaker and weaker. He might die one day. Zhengou stared at Shifeng with mixed emotions. Shifeng was also a legendary level Pandora, but something had gone wrong during an experiment back then, causing her to be traumatized. In the end she could not bear the torture and ran out of Zhengou Aoi's laboratory. When he thought about how Shifeng was now Dustless's subordinate, Zhengou Aoi's heart ached. He had created Shifeng. What was the difference between him and her father? Tell me, why are you helping Dustless? You should know about that guy's evil deeds. Wuchen hurt Xianxia. He is your nephew. Why are you still helping Wuchen? Aoi Zhengou looked at Shifeng bitterly. Tears flowed down his face as he spoke. Put away your acting skills. You know that I'm different from Lucy and the others. The other legendary level Pandoras are closer to Maria in nature, and I'm 99% human. After experiencing so many things, I already have my own opinions. Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? That's right, Lucy said with a smile. She didn't know what to say, but she didn't know what to say. Upon hearing this, Zhengou Oi was furious. His tears stopped as he said angrily, Shifeng, no matter what, there's one thing you can't deny. I'm your creator, your father, and Xianxia is your nephew. I'm your daughter? Shifeng seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He opened his eyes in an instant and stared at Aoi Zhengou. He pointed at Lucy beside him and unceremoniously exposed Aoi Zhengou's nonsense. Are you treating us as weapons or as daughters? Since I'm your daughter, why did some technicians in your laboratory say that I was a puppet? That included Lucy and the others. If you really treated them as your daughters, why did you seal Lucy and the others? Which father would seal his own daughter? Zhengou Oi stammered for a long time but could not explain the reason. He could not help but feel a little angry. Weren't all Pandoras with intelligence problems? Why was Shifeng so eloquent that he was speechless? Fortunately, Cassandra and Lucy are different from Shifeng. Zhengou Oi heaved a sigh of relief and suddenly felt lucky. If the other Pandoras were as smart as Shifeng, he might not have been able to control them. Let's end the chat here. Call Jean Renault. I've brought Lucy here. From now on we don't owe each other anything. Shifeng's tone was very cold, like a machine. If anyone who knew her saw her like this, they would definitely be shocked. Sorry, that's impossible. Stop dreaming. She's just a test subject. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Zhengou Oi did not hide it anymore. He immediately changed his expression. If you don't kill Dustless, I won't hand her over to you. It was because of the words a test subject that Lucy felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. She bit her lower lip with her silver teeth. Shameless guy, are you going back on your word? Shifeng revealed a rare expression of anger. She clenched her fists and a strong aura erupted from her body. Don't force me to attack. You have no chance of winning. She did not expect Zhengou Oi to be so shameless. When Lucy was captured by Dustless, Zhengou Oi was burning with anxiety. Later on, he used a series of methods to threaten Shifeng. At first he wanted her to kill Dustless and then release the hostage Yujin Wanderer. However, Shifeng refused. Later on, the condition changed to bringing Lucy back to Zhengou Aoi. Now that she was here, this old man actually went back on his word. Before they met, Shifeng still had a glimmer of hope for Zhengou Aoi. However, after seeing the nature of this old man, she completely lost all hope. So what if I go back on my word? Zhengou Aoi sneered. His eyes flickered with a sinister light. He was cunning and cruel. Shifeng, not only can your ruler, the Yujin Wanderer, not leave. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Do you think I'm not prepared? You really think too kindly of me. The moment he finished speaking, two figures appeared behind Zhengou Aoi. Chapter 57. To the current Dustless, this unprecedented stimulation surpassed everything else. Originally, he didn't have much interest in this woman, but now that Leibecca was behaving so well, his interest was completely piqued. If I had a camera right now, I really want to take a short video for Yashir Blake to see, Dustless thought in an extremely vulgar manner. After who knew how long, Leibecca grunted and some unknown liquid dripped from the corner of her mouth. She gave Dustless a few glances of reproach. Very good. From now on you're mine. After finishing, Dustless felt refreshed. He stared at Leibecca meaningfully and said, that brat Yashir Blake has already been blacklisted by me. If you continue to interact with him, it will only make me hate you more and more. In that case, I hope you can understand what I mean. After saying that, Dustless's face revealed a kind of haze. Not only was it a warning, but there was also a trace of killing intent. Since this kind of relationship had already happened, Dustless was naturally determined not to allow Labelle and Yashur Blake to have any contact. I understand. Lebecca wiped the residue from the corner of her mouth and helplessly nodded in agreement. Although she was more or less unhappy, this was the nature of the world. The fate of the weak could only be decided by the strong. After waiting for Dustless to return, Veronica and Sylvia arrived. The two women's expressions were two extremes. Veronica's face was dark and her small fists were clenched tightly. It was as if she had guessed the bad luck of a dog poop. This made Dustless completely confused. Was this woman having a stroke again? Sylvia's expression was also unprecedentedly strange. This little girl lowered her head. It would have been fine if she was just lowering her head, but the strange thing was that she would occasionally raise her head and use a shy gaze to look at Dustless. Seeing the two women's strange expressions, Dustless felt even more strange. I say, the two of you. Dustless's voice paused slightly and he directly said, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't give me this. That old man just sent an order. It's about us sisters. Veronica was the first to speak. There was a trace of displeasure in her tone. She said disdainfully, let us two sisters marry you. Sylvia lowered her head the moment she finished speaking. Really? Although Dustless was a little surprised, it was only for a short moment. There was nothing strange about it. Many years ago the king had this plan, but at that time, Dustless was not interested. First of all, the two sisters were too young at the time, especially Sylvia, who was only a little kid at the time. Then what do you two plan to do? Dustless drank a cup of water and asked in a gentle tone. Hearing that Wu Chen's voice suddenly softened, Veronica snorted coldly. Don't think that by pretending to be gentle we will marry you. It's simply a dream. IF * king. Hearing that, the veins on Dustless's forehead bulged. He almost could not help but go up and teach this disobedient girl a lesson. Didn't he always speak like this? When had he ever shouted? Then what about you? Dustless looked at Sylvia. The child's face instantly turned as red as a big apple. If it was in the past, Veronica would definitely have rejected him. Because at that time she still wanted to marry Sylvia to her loyal subordinate, Zhou Xian. You don't want to either, right? Dustless looked at Sylvia's embarrassed expression and asked indifferently. No. Sylvia hurriedly shook her head, afraid that Dustless would be angry. She explained, it's just that I. Dustless was embarrassed. He had wasted half a day and this little girl did not say anything. It was probably because she was saved by Yashur Blake when she was young, right? It was just that Sylvia did not know the truth yet. If she knew that the child who saved her was Yashur Blake, and that he was standing against her, who knew what she would think? Since both of you are not willing, then that's fine. Dustless was not angry and said extremely casually, I am not interested in this either. This way everyone will be happy and both of us will not have any, bam. Outrageous. Before Dustless could finish speaking, the bad-tempered Veronica slammed the table angrily and glared at Dustless furiously. She questioned in an unfriendly tone, what right do you have to refuse? Faster thief. Hearing that, Dustless was instantly dumbfounded. Mother ***, what kind of logic is this? It's fine if you refuse me, but I can't refuse you at all. This is worse than a bandit. Do you think that us two sisters are not worthy of you? Thinking of this, a cold light condensed in Veronica's eyes, and one of her hands even reached for the large sword hanging at her waist. Let me remind you, it's best not to use force. Have you forgotten what happened in the past? Dustless reminded with an evil smile. Why don't we review it again? Veronica's body stiffened when she heard that, and the anger in her heart dissipated like a spring breeze. The thought of using force almost instantly disappeared. She had forgotten the difference in strength between them because of her anger. That's right, in front of the great demon king Dustless, the strength that she was so proud of was simply unbearable to look at. You still look down on me. Although she had given up the idea of using force, Veronica had no intention of stopping. She said furiously, I've changed my mind now and I want to marry you. Veronica's words were like a super bomb. Dustless and Sylvia were blown up, and their brains couldn't wrap their heads around it for a moment. Chapter 58. Ferrito of Black was so angry that his roar shook the sky. If Keely was here at this moment, she definitely wouldn't mind tearing her into pieces and burning her bones to ashes. How did I raise such an ingrate? I should have killed her back then. Why aren't you doing it? Dustless provoked. If you don't do it, I'll cut you up and feed you to the fish. Leviathan of White's mouth twitched. He smiled but didn't say anything. If it was someone else, he would definitely snort. If it was Dustless. Thinking of this, a part of his body started to hurt again. Dustless had tested a similar experience on him before. That was why Leviathan of White was so afraid of Dustless. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Ferrito of Black roared again and again. The moment he finished speaking, it was as if a legendary god had spoken. The void suddenly dimmed. Dustless and Leviathan of White both looked at the sky subconsciously. Both of their expressions changed. In the depths of the sky, a huge meteorite suddenly appeared and smashed toward the two of them. He can even create meteorites? Even though he knew that Ferrito of Black was abnormally powerful, Leviathan of White's eyelids still twitched when he saw the huge meteorite. Isn't this too much of a freak? Humph, are you scared out of your wits? Seeing Leviathan of White's shocked expression, Ferrito of Black was quite proud. He boasted, "In this world, the only thing that I have scruples about is the green dragon." Speaking of this, his eyes were filled with endless heroism. The green dragon was temporarily eliminated. Didn't that mean that the world was right in front of him? But, the guy who can kill the green dragon, what kind of existence is he? Since when did such a person exist in this world? Ferrito of Black thought of the powerful existence that could kill the green dragon and suddenly had scruples in his heart. Because she had just been born, she didn't have time to investigate. So it's a meteorite. It does look good. Dustless also raised his head and looked at the huge meteorite falling from the sky. He said softly, "It's created using superior elements, right? This ability is so convenient. Can even create life." Not only the meteorite that covered the sky, but even Keely was created by Black Frito using superior elements. Just because it looks good? Let alone a human like you, even a dragon can easily destroy a giant meteorite like this. Black Ferrito raised his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke loudly and confidently. "You can't even withstand a single blow." Hearing this, Dustless curled his lips in disdain and mocked. "I don't have anything to say. You're just a frog in a well." With that, Dustless pointed at the void. Wang Su's flash. Boom boom boom. A huge beam of light shot towards the sky at an extremely fast speed. It disappeared the moment it left Dustless's hand. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A huge tremor came from the void, and the sky that had been darkened by the meteorites cleared up once again. Black Frito raised his head with a dumbfounded expression. The meteor that was a few kilometers in size had now turned into countless debris. Gulp. White Leviathan did not stop as he exclaimed, "Good, good, 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 good. It would be fine if it was just a small meteorite." Looking higher up in the sky, there was a huge boundless black hole in the void. It was also created by the power of Void Flash. It was obvious that the power of the meteorite was only a small part of it. Impossible. After Black Frito recovered from his shock, he screamed in disbelief as he shook his head. "This is definitely a trick. How can a mere human control this power that only gods can have?" Trick? Dustless could not help but laugh as he looked at Black Frito playfully. "Are you here to be funny? You can even say something like a trick. Why don't you do one for me now?" Black Frito looked at Dustless silently as a strange light flashed in his eyes. After a while he said, "Are you interested in cooperating with me?" No. Dustless rejected him straightforwardly. He had heard similar words countless times. There was no such thing as cooperating when the situation was not good. Moreover, Black Frito gave Dustless a very bad impression. This kind of guy should be eliminated as soon as possible. Cooperation was complete nonsense. "Don't be in a hurry to reject me." Black Frito smiled confidently and said temptingly, "If you and I work together, taking down this world is a piece of cake. How about we split it in half?" "That's it." Dustless looked even more disdainful. At the same time he glanced at White Leviathan. This guy's expression was a little strange. White Leviathan had made the same condition in the past. "You idiot, did you lose your mind from the shock just now? How can Master Dustless agree to such a ridiculous condition?" White Leviathan was the first to speak as he mocked. "Even if you give the whole world to Master Dustless, he will definitely not be moved." "That's right. Dustless nodded. That was indeed what he meant. If he wanted to conquer the world, he would have done it long ago. There was no need to go through so much trouble to cooperate with others. It was too superfluous. Therefore, no matter what nonsense Black Frito said, it was impossible in Dustless's eyes. Because no matter what, it meant that it was impossible. It's not that easy to conquer the world. Although Green Dragon is temporarily dead, he won't die at all. There was a trace of hatred in Black Frito's eyes. He seemed to have a lot of resentment towards Green Dragon. He said, "Only I know where his real body is hidden." There is such a thing as a real body? A strange light flashed in Dustless's eyes. The green dragon that he killed before was just an existence that was entrenched in the body of Yukimobe. He didn't expect that a real body would suddenly appear. Forget it, it's all the same. Dustless didn't care anymore. After dealing with Black Frito, he used Rinnegan's dojutsu to search this guy's head. If it's too simple. The power of Green Dragon is not something you can imagine. Black Frito shouted coldly because Dustless didn't take Green Dragon seriously. If I can kill him once, I can kill him a second time. What's so difficult about that? Dustless didn't take it to heart, but after he said that, the way Black Fletcher looked at him immediately changed. You mean, you killed the Green Dragon before? Black Frito's voice was choked. He looked quite shocked and his eyes were wide open. In this world, besides Master Dustless, who else could it be? White Leviathan took the opportunity to flatter. As long as there was a chance, he wouldn't let it go easily. Damn it, no wonder he's so strong. Black Frito took a deep breath. He thought it was just a small fish, but he didn't expect to kick an iron plate this time. I just killed him along the way. Dustless said calmly. It was really like that. If Green Dragon didn't take the initiative to jump up, Dustless would never find trouble with Green Dragon. In the end, it was the other party who was looking for trouble. It couldn't be blamed on him. Don't tell me you're scared. Noticing that Black Frito suddenly became silent, the disdain on White Leviathan's face was even more obvious. He mocked, "You idiot, where did your confidence go?" This sentence suddenly poked Black Frito's sore spot. He snorted and didn't reply. Instead, he stared at Dustless faintly. It wasn't hard to see that Black Frito was completely terrified at this moment. If she knew that the culprit who killed Green Dragon was Dustless, she wouldn't dare to provoke him even if she was beaten to death, because the difference in strength between them was like heaven and earth. One had to understand that Green Dragon was Black Frito's natural enemy, and Dustless killed her natural enemy. One could imagine how terrifying his strength was just by thinking about it. There was dead silence between heaven and earth. It was so quiet that it was a little depressing. Hee, you deserve it. Let's see what you're going to do. On the other side, White Leviathan raised the corner of his scary mouth, and his head revealed a gloating smile. This bastard, he used to bully me because he was strong. Now he's stupid, right? Did he kick an iron plate? This bastard who was watching the show, he didn't even remind me. He must have done it on purpose. He wants to kill Green Dragon with a borrowed knife. Does he want to kill Green Dragon with a borrowed knife? Black Frito was so angry that his ferocious face twitched. You're also very scheming. Dustless's gaze suddenly fell on White Leviathan and he said directly, I've killed him. There's nothing in this world that can stop you, right? Dustless suddenly remembered the words of the Dean of the Academy. No matter what kind of dragon it was, they all had the ambition to rule the world. They all saw their own kind as a thorn in their side and a thorn in their flesh. Since Black Dragon wanted to kill White Leviathan, why would White Leviathan not want to borrow Dustless's hands to kill Black Dragon? In this way, there would be nothing that could stop him from occupying the world. I wouldn't dare. White Leviathan was not stupid. Naturally, he could hear the implied meaning in Dustless's words. He quickly denied and admitted his mistake. If this big boss saw any clues, he would definitely kill him too. Unfortunately, there's no place in this world where you can have a foothold. Dustless looked at White Leviathan and said directly, I've already given the ruling rights of this world to Grey Dragon. You're on your own in the future. Hearing this, White Leviathan's huge body stiffened slightly, and the air froze for a moment. Grey Dragon was an independent and special existence. Although he was a dragon, he lived in the form of a human, just like how Loki did not recognize him as a dragon at all. Everything that happened before was a misunderstanding. Black Frito said awkwardly. His dragon eyes stared at Dustless and his tone was apologetic. He said faintly, "I don't plan to be your enemy." "Is that so?" "I'm sorry." Dustless's tone was cold and he said impolitely, "I plan to be your enemy." Previously, Keely had asked Dustless to kill Black Fredo. It would have been fine if he hadn't met him. Now that this guy was right in front of him, how could Dustless just watch Black Fredo leave? No way. If he let this guy go, it would be hard to explain to Keely. "I'm giving you face but you don't want it. You don't know what's good for you." Black Fredo's eyes were spitting fire and her eye sockets were about to burst. She felt that she had already given enough face to Dustless. She had even addressed him as you, but this guy still wouldn't let her go. Why? Black Fredo and Dustless didn't have any grudges. "At most we'll fight to the death." Black Fredo kept roaring, and his body was emitting a biting cold aura and madness of perishing together. However, this guy still didn't dare to make a move. Could be seen that he was just talking nonsense. "Are you afraid of death?" Dustless sneered and said with disdain, "Since you're not moving then I'm coming." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless turned into a beam of light and shot out. In an instant he disappeared from Black Fredo's sight. This freak, how can a human have this kind of power? He's so fast. Black Fredo's eyes were twitching wildly and she couldn't stop blinking. Dustless's speed was so fast that she couldn't see him clearly with her naked eyes. "Idiot, I'm behind you." A teasing voice came from behind. Black Fredo's big eyes were opened to the maximum extent, and they were about to fall out of his eye sockets. In front of his line of sight, a Dustless suddenly appeared. "That's just a shadow clone used to confuse you." As soon as Dustless finished speaking, there were a few bang 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 sounds. In Black Fredo's eyes, Dustless turned into a piece of wood. Light-speed kick. A pure golden shining foot fell down like Mount Tai, and the position was exactly on top of Black Fredo's head. Boom. Black Fredo spat out a big mouthful of blood on the spot. Under this huge force, his body was blasted vertically into the ocean. Fush. There were huge waves on the ocean and a large amount of seawater surged in all directions. As expected of Dustless, Sama, even if the opponent is the Black Dragon, it's not at all an opponent of the same level. The students of Midgard Academy who came by boat in the distance were surprised. When they saw Black Fredo being kicked into the sea, they all grinned and chuckled. The most obvious one was Keely. Her eyes narrowed into two lines. Even though Black Fredo had created her, he had abandoned her just because she failed a certain mission. He was extremely heartless. He shouldn't be so fragile. I still want to play more. That kick didn't scare me to death. As Wuxian looked at the calm sea surface that was deathly silent, he thought to himself he shouldn't have really died, right? His skin shouldn't be that brittle. After a few minutes, Black Fredo, who was kicked into the deep sea, still didn't move as if he was dead. Still playing dead. Dustless released his observation hockey, and the sea area within a radius of tens of kilometers was included in his perception. Found it. His lightly closed eyes suddenly opened. Wuxian looked into the distance with a soul-sucking light floating in his eyes. "You don't know the difference between life and death. Do you feel sad that I didn't cut you into 8 pieces? Whiz whiz whiz." Without saying a word, Dustless once again turned into a light and swooped out, leaving a straight golden line in the sky. "That guy seems to be crazy." White Leviathan was stunned, and his eyes followed the place where Dustless disappeared, and a small cruise ship appeared in front of him. Black Fredo knew that the gap between him and Dustless was too big, so he decisively chose other opponents. The target was the people of Midgard Academy. Compared with Dustless, this group of people was simply a soft lamb. Plop. The sea near the cruise ship exploded and waves of tens of meters high rushed into the sky, and the sea began to shake violently. All this happened so suddenly that the moment the sea hit the cruise ship, it almost overturned it. "What's the situation?" These naive little girls all cried out in fear. Many of them even fell down, their noses bruised and their faces swollen. "Someone attacked us, be careful." The dean showed a dignified look and ran to the deck to look at the sea under the deep sea. In a trance he saw a fast-moving black shadow. This shameless guy, he can't beat Dustless, so he came to bully the weak? The dean clenched his fists and scolded Black Fredo for being shameless and despicable. Although he didn't see the real murderer, who else could it be except for Black Fredo? Bang bang bang. The blue sea exploded again and the water column rushed to the sky, and a dark figure flew out with the waves. I'm shameless? Isn't that guy shameless? Isn't he bullying the weak? Black Fredo's voice was extremely hoarse and his eyes were red, full of great resentment. Looking around, he didn't look as majestic as before. First of all, the pair of black wings had been burned to ashes by the Tensho. Secondly, he was kicked by Dustless just now. Black Fredo's head was caved in and the footprint was particularly obvious. Even without his wings, Black Fredo used his own strength to step on the sea with his hind legs. Chapter 59. How could he resist such a powerful attack with just a finger? Are we all living in a telepathic world? The hearts of all the spectators were filled with doubts as they looked at Wu Chen's tender body. He was not tall and his body was not strong. However, under such an ordinary body, there was an absolute power hidden. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The black blade pierced through Artie's body and cut him into 8 pieces effortlessly. His limbs and the metal wings on his back were all shredded into pieces. Bang! Artie's body parts fell to the ground. His giant arm was so heavy that it created a deep hole in the ground. How did he cut through such a thick armor? Is he even human? The audience was stunned. They looked at Artie's body parts on the ground. Artie's armor was as thick as an arm, but it was still cut into pieces by the black coffin. Many people were so shocked that they started to doubt their lives. Bang! 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 Artie's body parts fell to the ground one after another. His tall and mighty figure collapsed, and there was a pile of stone-sized debris on the ground. I lost. Artie's head was not destroyed. He could still talk, but his voice was full of disappointment. It seems that I'm not strong enough. Dustless was not happy or sad, nor did he have the pride of a victor. He said coldly, "You're wrong. It's not that you're not strong enough. In fact, you're already very strong. Your only fatal mistake is that you chose the wrong opponent." Dustless said nothing. A high-density energy ball jumped out of his hand. Boom, boom, boom. Artie's body parts were blasted into pieces. The fire burned everything and his body was completely destroyed. Do you want to surrender or do you want me to do it? Dustless stared at Rimsey calmly. She didn't flinch and looked at Camilla and Inesta. As a shape-shifted being, she wouldn't be afraid and would go through fire and water with a simple command. We've lost. Inesta lowered her head, dejected. I admit defeat. Rimsey destroyed her school badge. The competition is over. Contestant Dustless from Star Guide Academy and contestant Yuli's won this competition. This was a very exciting competition. The commentator's excited voice echoed in everyone's ears. Although Artie had been destroyed, which was the same as being killed, no one would care about his life since he was just an impersonation. To put it bluntly, it was just a bunch of data. After the end of the competition, Dustless and Yuli's had undoubtedly become stars. They were like stars surrounding the moon. Next was the last competition, and the contestant they were about to face was the strongest witch in history, Alphalia. When they returned, Dustless and the others were not happy at all even though they had won the competition. What? Flora's missing? Who did it? After returning to the lounge, Ulysses looked at Claudia and the others as if she had been struck by lightning. It seems that some things are unavoidable. No matter what, they will still happen. Wu Chen rubbed his temples with a headache and asked, Are there any clues? Xianxia. Claudia explained, I received a call from her earlier. She wants to fight to the death with you. If you refuse, she will kill the hostage. What a rascal. Ulysses' beautiful eyes spewed out scorching flames. All right. Since she took the initiative to come to me, I don't need to look for her. Dustless agreed readily. Actually, that woman is not bad. Unfortunately, she has a brother complex. I killed Tian Weiyao, so we are destined to be enemies. Dustless sighed and said with a regretful tone. At the same time, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Since she is an enemy, I can't do anything about it. I will be in charge of contacting her. Claudia turned and left, leaving only Dustless and Ulysses in the lounge. Don't worry. Tian Weiyao is not the kind of terrorist who would kill innocent people. Otherwise, she would have killed Flora long ago. Dustless stroked Ulysses' pink hair that hung down to her waist. He patted the young girl's shoulder and comforted, I can guarantee this. Frankly speaking, even if there was a problem, there was still the outer Tao reincarnation of heaven to revive. About 30 minutes later, Claudia returned. The time of the battle to the death was set for tonight. That woman couldn't wait to take Dustless's head. In the evening, the sky was cold. According to the appointed location, Dustless came to a deserted area. There were all kinds of damaged buildings all around. After being washed by the rain, they were full of cracks. Looking around, there wasn't a single person within a few hundred meters. She really picked a good location. I almost got lost. Dustless stood on an abandoned building. The night was pitch black and he couldn't see anything clearly. Buzz buzz buzz. A chill suddenly surged behind his back. Dustless immediately felt as if he had fallen into an icy hell. He turned his head slightly and saw a figure flickering in the darkness. As someone who had experienced hundreds of battles, he knew that this was the purest killing intent. Where is Flora? Dustless looked at the face of the black figure and asked. I released her long ago. My target is you. The young girl's voice was as cold as ice. She held a sharp katana in her hand, and her whole body was emitting a threatening aura. Is that so? Actually, you don't need to capture people to threaten me. As long as you challenge me to a battle, I will come out. Dustless's eyes instantly turned scarlet. Actually, I am the same as you. I don't intend to let you go. After saying that, Dustless released a huge amount of killing intent and pounced on Tianweiyao like a storm. This woman had a brother complex, and it was the fact that he had killed Tianweiyao. There was no way for the two of them to bury the hatchet. He could only ruthlessly destroy this flower. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 60. Is it uncomfortable for me to hug you? You're running a fever. After walking for a while, Dustless could not help but ask. Shifeng's entire body was burning, and her red face made her feel like she was on fire. No. Shifeng shook her head repeatedly. Her heartbeat sped up when she heard Dustless's words. After thinking about it, Shifeng could only take the initiative to change the topic. Otherwise it would be too awkward. She said, Teacher Dustless, what do you plan to do with Lucy and Wendy May? Actually, I don't have any ill intentions toward them. I don't intend to use or tame them. To be honest, they're too weak. They're not qualified to be my subordinates. Dustless's words shocked Shifeng. He actually said that the legendary level Pandora was not qualified to be his subordinate. That was too arrogant. However, judging from the strength Dustless had displayed, there was no need for him to take in his subordinates. He represented the strongest. Why would he need subordinates? Teacher, what's the meaning of holding them captive? Are you planning to hand them over to Sulier for research? Shifeng asked nervously. She had once been Oi Zhengou's test subject. She knew better than anyone how it felt to be used as a lab rat. It was a desperate life where one could neither live nor die. Upon hearing that, Dustless stopped in his tracks. He extended his finger and tapped Shifeng's forehead. Then he touched his cheek and muttered to himself, Do I look like a scumbag who betrays others? I'm obviously very handsome. Shifeng felt a little embarrassed when she heard Dustless's words. She gritted her teeth and said, No matter what, Lucy and the others used to be my sisters. I hope they can live peacefully under the sun in the future. Of course, that's not a problem. Dustless agreed readily. At the same time, he revealed his ultimate goal. I do want to study legendary level Pandora, but I won't hand them over to Sulier. You should have heard of Scarlet O'Hare, right? About a few years ago, after she fell out with Oi Zhengou, she became one of my people. Now she's helping me study the secrets of legendary level Pandora in Alaska. With Lucy and the others ready-made legendary level Pandora, with O'Hare's level he might succeed in his research in the near future. Teacher Dustless, are you planning to imitate Aoki Zhengou and use Pandora's power to strengthen yourself and rule over humans? Shifeng asked as his golden eyes stared into Dustless's eyes. People say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Once you lie, you will appear unnatural and weak. However, after staring at Dustless for dozens of seconds, his deep black eyes were still calm and indifferent. He didn't show any signs of stage fright and just stared straight at Shifeng. Instead, she was the first to admit defeat. Being hugged by Dustless, Zivon could even feel the warm breath from Dustless's mouth on her face. As a result, her pretty face blushed once again. Ruling the world? What a boring thing to do. After a while, Dustless finally spoke as he stared at the blue sky in the distance. Actually, it might not be a good thing for a person to stand at the peak of the world. After a long time it will be lonely. The feeling of being at the top is really boring. You don't even have an opponent. Every day feels like a year. Just thinking about it makes me bored. I understand. Sorry, I didn't understand Dustless's ambition. Shifeng lowered her head apologetically. Dustless's disdainful look was definitely not a lie. He was annoyed from the bottom of his heart. In fact, it could be described in one sentence. Being invincible was so lonely. When you stand at the peak alone and all your opponents have been trampled to death, what's the point of walking alone in the clouds? Therefore, all along, Dustless was not interested in ruling the world. It was more interesting to play in the human world. After chatting with Shifeng for a while, the two of them unknowingly walked into an underground laboratory. It was the place where Zhengao Aoi was hiding. They also found the wanderers of Yujin who were about to starve to death. They were very miserable. They were only skin and bones left. Perhaps they would starve to death after waiting for a night. Am I one step too late? In one of Zhengao Aoi's laboratories, Dustless stood in front of two containers. There was still liquid on the ground that had not dried up. Not long ago, the people inside suddenly woke up, broke the containers and left. Cassandra and Tesla. Dustless muttered the names of the last two legendary Pandora. The people sleeping in these two containers were probably the two of them. He didn't encounter the two women in the previous battle. So Wuxian thought that they were still in deep sleep. Now it seemed that they had woken up. Moreover, they had quietly left. It was estimated that the two women had also gone to find Wuxian for revenge. Especially Cassandra. He probably hated Dustless. Kanzuya Aoi had an unusual relationship with her. That guy was crippled by Dustless and became the world's #1 eunuch. He was even sent to a mental hospital. Cassandra must hate Dustless to death. After about half an hour, Dustless, who did not find anything, chose to leave. Before he left, he did not forget to set fire to the underground laboratory. It was too cruel. There were many human experiments, and even newborn babies were used for human experiments by Zhengao Aoi. It was said that it was for the sake of mankind. In fact, it was just to create more terrifying weapons. Therefore, when Dustless left, he directly used Great Fire Annihilation to burn everything. It could be considered to have ended Zhengao Aoi's evil life. Are Cassandra and Tesla okay? Shifeng looked at Dustless worriedly. His face was haggard and weak. Wendy May and Lucy's soul reserves were at the level of 100,000, while Cassandra and Tesla's soul reserves were at the level of 1,000,000. It was self-evident what this meant. The difference was obvious. Chapter 61. Black Zetsu looked at Madara with a determined face. He hoped that Madara would change his mind and give up Dustless Uchiha. After all, it's about the plan to resurrect Kaguya. Thousands of years of planning, Black Zetsu didn't dare to be careless. As the saying goes, a single mistake can lead to the failure of the entire plan. Even the most careful loophole can lead to the failure of the entire plan, not to mention the replacement of Uchiha Obito with Uchiha Wuchen. The impact is even more fatal. After waiting for thousands of years, the plan will succeed. How can Black Zetsu let Dustless, such a little devil, mess up his plan? Madara-sama, that kid's pursuit of power has reached the point of madness. Once he gathers the 9-tailed beasts. Black Zetsu was silent and just looked at Madara. It's impossible for Madara not to understand such a simple meaning. Manjikyu Sharingan is not an ordinary Tomo Sharingan. To a certain extent, it can see the content of the steel of the Uchiha family's Naka shrine. It's inevitable that Dustless will do something crazy. Hearing this, Madara's brows couldn't help but frown. His eyes flashed with hesitation and he began to hesitate. He's just cultivating a pawn to resurrect himself, not cultivating an enemy who will compete with him for the Jubi. According to what Black Zetsu said, it's not very likely that Dustless will definitely have the idea of the Jubi. And as Black Zetsu said, Manjikyu Sharingan can already see the content of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. If Dustless obtains the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he can see the content of the Rinnegan. That guy has no direct descendants for the time being. His parents are ordinary 3-tomo Sharingan, and according to the number of times he uses his eyes are not far from self-sealing. White Zetsu said according to the form of the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, at least in the future, Dustless can't open the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, let alone the legendary Rinnegan. Humph, that little devil will never be able to open his Rinnegan. Black Zetsu sneered again and again in his heart. The conditions for opening the Rinnegan were extremely harsh. One must be Indra's reincarnator. This alone closed the door to all the Uchiha clansmen, and it also required the body cells of Azura's reincarnation to be fused. And it's not certain when he will be able to awaken the Rinnegan, because Madara is close to dying of old age. Is that so? In other words, Uchiha Dustless is almost blind, and there is no suitable Sharingan to transplant. Uchiha Madara's sunken eyes suddenly swelled and he looked particularly scary. It's better to bring in Uchiha Obito and Uchiha Dustless. Let them work together and monitor each other. White Zetsu looked at Madara's gloomy face and carefully suggested. Let me go. It's good to notice this. Hearing this, Black Zetsu was furious and his anger burned all his reason. When he was about to scold White Zetsu, Madara agreed with White Zetsu's proposal and felt that the plan was feasible. Madara-sama, this is not good, is it? Black Zetsu's mouth twitched and he suppressed the anger in his heart. He said to Madara, if you change the plan like this, unexpected things may happen, and it is not impossible for the entire Eye of the Moon plan to collapse. Black Zetsu looked at Madara seriously, and his tone was filled with endless sadness. Don't worry. Madara looked at Black Zetsu in surprise, and doubts emerged in his heart. Usually, Black Zetsu was obedient to his orders. Today he always blocked Dustless intentionally or unintentionally. However, although he was confused, Madara didn't think much about it, because he always regarded Black Zetsu as the incarnation of his will, and he never suspected that Black Zetsu had other motives. The so-called plan is the prototype of my resurrection. There is a saying that the world is changeable and the plan can't keep up with the changes. There is no such thing as an airtight plan designed by human beings. Any plan would have a loophole that no one knew about. Moreover, no matter who set it up, there would always be loopholes. This was something that Madara could accept. He was a human, not a god. It was impossible for him to take care of everything. Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Obito are the ones who perfect the loopholes in his plan. The reason why he chose Dustless and Obito is that they can restrain each other. Even if Dustless really wants to attack the Bijou, Obito will not easily leave it to him. Uchiha Dustless. Just a little bit of gravel, it's hard to compare with me. Madara's dry mouth raised a domineering smile and his face was full of contempt and disdain. For him who had opened the Rinnegan, not to mention Uchiha Wuxian who was only a half-baked Mangekyo Sharingan, he hadn't even opened the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and even Hashirama wasn't his opponent. After all, the Rinnegan is above the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. It can create and destroy the world. It is the power of the six paths, and its power is much more powerful than the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Black Zetsu opened his mouth but he chose to be silent. He was depressed. Dustless was not in his script, and now his plan several years ago is bound to change. He was sure that Obito would not be out of his control. After all, he has been secretly watching Obito for many years and he knows where his weakness is. As long as he follows the vine to the melon, he can successfully make Obito fall into the darkness. But Dustless is fundamentally different. According to the current evidence, Uchiha Dustless is a self-centered person, and he will not be shaken by anything. Even if his parents are killed in front of him, for Uchiha Dustless, he will not be shaken. It seems that I can only let nature take its course. He sighed silently. Although Black Zetsu is the kind of person who doesn't believe in fate, but in the current situation he can only watch Madara's practice. As the incarnation of Madara's will, it is impossible for him to disobey Madara. Black Zetsu said that Wuxian was really a headache. However, Madara had already nodded to pull Wuxian into the team and he was determined. What he had to do was to do everything possible to bring Wuxian in. This made Black Zetsu more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. His stomach was churning and he almost vomited. It was particularly uncomfortable. Chapter 62. Time flew by like a white steed. Unknowingly, a week had passed. Although it was only a week, a lot of things happened. The most sensational thing that happened during this period was the death of the cloud's rakeage by tens of thousands of rocks ninjas. The death of a village's kage caused an unprecedented sensation. It was like a rock falling into the calm water, suddenly causing a huge wave. The third Tsuchikage's son, Kitsuchi, led tens of thousands of rocks ninjas to kill the rakeage. This news raged around the world like a hurricane, making the Third Shinobi World War even more suspenseful. So all the shinobi villages were waiting for the cloud's next move. The daimyo of the Land of Thunder also declared war on the Land of Earth and vowed to make the rock-hidden village pay the price. However, the cloud-hidden village's ninjas were still hiding in the village and completely ignored the daimyo's orders. The war against the Earth country was inevitable, but the premise was that the new rakeage must be chosen, so in a short time, the cloud had no military force to attack the rock village. Konoha was defeated by the Earth country, and then the third rakeage was killed by the rock village. For a while, the entire shinobi world was in awe of the rock village. Some of the smaller countries that were hesitant to join the rock village, which made Inoki's life extremely good these days. But that wasn't the case. In the tent, the atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Inoki was looking at the information in his hand gloomily, and his old face changed dramatically. He was panting and his face was extremely gloomy, and he was about to go berserk. Tsuchikage, the Gobi's Jinchuriki, carefully looked at Inoki's face and couldn't help but feel numb. Looking at Inoki's angry face, he knew that the information in his hand must be about the defeat of the rock-hidden village, or the defeat treaty that the cloud-hidden village ordered the rock-hidden village to sign. Otherwise, Inoki wouldn't be so angry. This old man cherished his life very much, otherwise he wouldn't be alive now. That damn muscular man is really not an ordinary person. Chakra surged and the information in his hand was shattered into pieces. The muscular man he was talking about was naturally the cloud's rakeage. Facing the attack of tens of thousands of rocks ninjas, he could last for 3 days and 3 nights. Speaking of this, Inoki took a deep breath. Although the rakeage wasn't that old, he was in his 40s or 50s. What made Inoki speechless the most was that the old guy was not killed, but died of exhaustion. In other words, if he still had physical strength and chakra, he would have been able to fight without any restrictions. Luck. Inoki scolded, and his expression became gloomier. It's good to kill the rakeage, but the loss of the rock village was also terrible. More than 2,000 ninjas were killed. Fortunately, the rakeage is dead. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Inoki also calmed down and then began to smile again. Looking at the map on the table, the small earth-colored flag almost occupied the entire map. Staring at the small red flag that had been swallowed up in front of him, Inoki's mouth raised into a sneer. That was Konoha's ninjas. We must quickly deal with Konoha. Soon the cloud's ninjas will attack us. Frowning, Inoki said worriedly, and a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. He naturally understood the simple truth that a great man must be ruthless, and a small man must not be a gentleman. If they don't clean up Konoha's ninjas in time, facing the cloud's attack, the rock's ninjas might really be destroyed. But after the Sannin came 3 days ago, they have stabilized the situation. We have no advantage at all. The Yanbi's Jinchuriki looked at Inoki coldly, and his words were full of sarcasm and dissatisfaction. Everyone knew that he had a bad relationship with Inoki. Old Rashi looked at him coldly. He was against attacking the rakeage from the beginning because it was useless to be arrogant, and it would bring disaster to the village. Especially since the Cloud Village also has 2 Jinchuriki, and the whole country is full of fighting faction. It's useless for you to say this now. Inoki also stared at Old Purple coldly with a fierce look on his face, and then rolled his eyes, showing a look of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. Obviously he was saying that he was the Tsuchikage. If you don't agree, then bite me. Seeing Inoki's attitude, Old Purple was furious. His breath was filled with sparks. It was obvious that he was on the verge of turning black. Don't be angry, don't forget that Konoha is still watching us. The Gobi's Jinchuriki smiled bitterly. The relationship between Inoki and Old Rashi was like this. Both of them didn't like each other. Perhaps if he wasn't there, they would have already fought. Old Purple was a straightforward person and he could not tolerate sand in his eyes. Inoki, on the other hand, liked to play tricks. Naturally, the two of them had different opinions and views. We must get rid of Konoha's ninjas. Old Rashi's eyes were cold and he was murderous. This was a must, even if the Sannin and Dustless arrived, Konoha's ninjas wouldn't be able to survive. Although Inoki was as stubborn as old Rashi, they had the same idea. They must quickly get rid of Konoha, and then return to the rock to prevent the Cloud's revenge. Chapter 63. Leaving behind these cold words, he did not even look at Leech's corpse in the Imperial courtyard. He turned around and left resolutely. Trying to run? Actually, I can't wait for you to run. After all, I left that thing on your body. Wuxian revealed a meaningful smile. After discovering that Imperial Courtyard's heart not had run away, he was not as upset as he had imagined. Instead, there was a faint smile on his lips, giving people the impression that he had done it on purpose. Dustless didn't stay for long and quickly left as well. There wasn't much value in staying here any longer. In fact, Dustless didn't plan to kill Imperial not from the very beginning. After all, it was pointless for her to die here alone, and the Imperial Knot residence wouldn't be destroyed. Therefore, it was better to wait for this woman to return and gather the experts of the Imperial Knot residence. Then he would appear and destroy the entire Imperial Knot residence in one fell swoop. When Imperial Knot fled, Dustless had already left the spatial coordinates of the Flying Thunder God on his body. There was no need to worry at all. Dustless had finally returned to Nuliang Group's spaceship. Everyone's hearts were finally at ease. This was because Dustless was their hope. Without Dustless, no one would be able to survive in the capital where demons resided. Lord Dustless, after you left, many demons attacked us. Everyone worked together and successfully repelled the enemies. The leader was that guy named Ao Xitagarba, Snow Lady reported to Dustless. At a glance, the entire spaceship was filled with wounded, bandaged people. Everyone had fought with their lives on the line. That big-eyed monster sure knows how to pick the right time to use this kind of trick when I'm not around. Dustless clenched his fists, then relaxed them. There was no need to mind because all of this would end soon. The feathered fox was about to give birth, and after that Hui was born, everything in this world would come to an end. Boom, boom, boom. There was a violent explosion in the distance. Boundless black fog gathered in the sky from all directions, as if the world had reached its end. Darkness covered the sky and it was a scene of doomsday. At this moment all the demons in the capital looked up at the sky. The surging darkness spread out like dark clouds, covering the entire capital. Moreover, it continued to spread endlessly as if there was no end to it. Looking at the horizon, everyone felt a chill and pressure. It was as if a demon from hell had awakened. The evil aura was chilling. Did you all feel it? Dustless looked at the dark horizon and guessed something. Soon after, he swept his gaze towards Snow Lady and the others. He could ignore the uncomfortable chill, but Snow Lady and the others couldn't. He could clearly see the cold sweat on their temples and even their hairs on their bodies. Some demons with weak willpower even knelt on the ground and looked at the sky with reverence. At the same time, all the demons who had heard of Huey's legend raised their arms and cheered. Their earth-shattering cheers resounded through the entire capital. Hormau's face was tense. She was also sweating profusely. She looked at the surging darkness in the horizon as if she was facing a great enemy. Her face was pale as she murmured, "Could it be that the demon called Hui has been revived? Yes, not only Hui but his mother, the feathered fox. But this kid is really strange. He was actually born in such a way." Dustless's clear gaze pierced through the endless darkness until it reached the vast starry sky. At the highest point in the sky he saw a massive black sphere. The feathered fox was standing on that sphere. Buzz, 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 buzz. After a long while the darkness in the sky dissipated. A dazzling golden light descended from the depths of the clouds. Bathed in this light, the feathered fox seemed extremely divine. "Welcome everyone who has come from afar to witness the night of Qingming's birth with me, the feathered fox." The feathered fox's gentle voice traveled down from the sky, spreading to every corner of the capital. Perhaps it was because she had just given birth, but her gentle voice was pleasant and filled with motherly love. "Is she treating us like guests? This female fox really knows how to put on airs. I hope she can still be so calm when the battle starts." Dustless curled his lips. He turned his head and said to Snow Lady, Hormao and the others, Go back and prepare. Prepare for what? Snow Lady and Hormao looked at each other. They didn't know what Dustless was talking about. Your reactions are so slow. Do I need to remind you? Of course it's the party after defeating the feathered fox and Hui. Dustless lectured them. It's too tiring to have servants like you. Hearing this, Snow Lady and Hormao rolled their eyes at Dustless. However, they couldn't hide the joy on their faces. Dustless's confidence was like a shot in the arm. Their restless hearts also calmed down. The evil aura that Hui emitted was too terrifying. It was almost suffocating. Even their souls trembled. None of them had the confidence to face it. They didn't even need Hui. Just his mother, the feathered fox, was enough to sweep through all enemies. Thus they could only rely on Dustless. The calmer he was, the calmer Hormao and the others felt. They had completely become an existence of faith. Ah! Long live Lady Feathered Fox. Long live Lady Feathered Fox. A very excited voice came from the other side. Dustless glanced over and saw that on the attic a few hundred meters away, Lai Xidagarba was waving his arms excitedly. His whole face was red. He can hear it so clearly from so far away. Just how loud is this old man's voice? Dustless muttered. He then raised his right hand. A high-density energy ball instantly formed at the tip of his thumb. Chapter 64. Ka. A large number of cracks appeared in the container containing Shataraza. An unknown mysterious liquid flowed out and covered the floor. Dustless could even hear her heartbeat through his observation hockey. She's about to wake up. Seeing this, Scarlett O'Hara was extremely excited. Her face and neck were red. She wanted to prove to Dustless that she was more outstanding than Aoi Django, more outstanding than him. Bang! A few seconds later the container exploded. Glass shards splattered all over the floor. The clean laboratory was also a mess. However, Dustless and O'Hara were concerned about Shataraza. Everything else was just a small problem. She won't be like the other legendary Pandora, right? For example, her IQ will be lowered. Dustless could not help but ask worriedly. If that was the case, what was the point of becoming a legendary Pandora? Absolutely not. With a straight face, Scarlett O'Hara patted her chest solemnly and promised, I can guarantee this with my life. Is that so? That's for the best. Dustless shut his mouth in satisfaction. When he looked at Shataraza again, she had already opened her eyes. Cough. Dustless coughed awkwardly. He had just climbed out of the container. At this moment, Shataraza was still naked. He could only put his clothes on Shataraza's body to avoid exposing certain important parts. Dustless. Shataraza's eyes were hesitant as she called out Dustless's name in a daze. She rubbed her head. How long have I been asleep? My head is dizzy and I feel like my body is about to rust. It's been a few months. Your transformation is complete and you just woke up, Dustless answered truthfully. Then he asked expectantly, Can you move? Try attacking me. Scarlett O'Hara also looked at Shataraza with a hopeful expression. She wanted to prove to everyone that the legendary Pandora she had developed was better. Otherwise she would be letting down Dustless's cells. Okay. Shataraza's cute dimples appeared on her cheeks as she said to Dustless, You have to be more serious. Hearing this, Dustless chuckled. The cells in your body are not only Maria's but also mine. Do you think I will lose to my own ability? Then you're in for a big surprise. Suddenly, her body flickered and she disappeared without a trace. Dustless could not help but be astonished when he saw this. Of course, he was not astonished by Shataraza's speed. Rather, this ability made him think of a profound movement technique that could never appear on a human's head. This shouldn't be possible, right? Dustless immediately shook his head in denial. If that was really the case, it would be too inconceivable. Bang! Suddenly appearing behind Dustless, Shatalisa threw a punch at him. Dustless did not put up any defenses. Her strength was so great that it shattered his body, and the wind from her punch raised the laboratory to the ground. D****, my laboratory. But speaking of which, is there a mistake? How can a casual attack be so powerful? Scarlett O'Hara wailed in shock. Her laboratory was made of special metal. When the legendary Pandora Lucy had once been here to investigate, She had refused to cooperate and tried to escape. However, she had not been able to destroy the laboratory with a single punch. Now Shataraza had destroyed it so easily. Was this strength heaven-defying? What the hell? Compared to Scarlet O'Hara, Dustless was even more shocked. He carefully sensed the residual energy fluctuations on Shataraza's body and could not help but say in disbelief, "There's no way I'm wrong. That power just now was definitely spiritual pressure. And that movement technique was undoubtedly the Grim Reaper's teleportation steps." At this point, Dustless felt that his brain was not enough. This fellow had only transplanted his cells. Not only had she obtained spiritual pressure, but she had even learned teleportation steps. How could he not be shocked? Although the spiritual pressure contained in Shataraza's body was negligible and was not worth mentioning compared to Dustless's, it was more than enough to instantly kill the so-called legendary Pandora. I don't know either. After I woke up, I inexplicably learned this power. Shataraza tilted her head. She had been in a deep sleep for the past few months. After she woke up, she suddenly controlled this ability. She should have inherited it from Lord Dustless. Scarlet O'Hara rubbed her chin and said. Although it was far-fetched, this was the only possibility. After all, the cells in Shataraza's body had come from Dustless. Perhaps. Dustless nodded gently. In fact, there were many similar examples. For example, Shimura Danzo in Naruto had transplanted Hashirama's cells and learned to use Mokutan. Although he was only a dabbler, he did know some Mokutan. Shataraza was in a similar situation. After transplanting Dustless's cells, she had obtained the spiritual pressure belonging to the Grim Reaper, but the amount was very small. By the way, do you have any other abilities? Dustless blinked and said, for example, this thing. After saying that, Dustless revealed the Uchiha clan's exclusive Sharingan, which shone with a demonic light. Anyone who was stared at by it would feel despair as if they had fallen into hell. No. Shataraza looked at the blood-red gem-like eyes. She had not awakened this ability. That's strange. I can understand you obtaining the Sharingan, but I'm a little confused about the spiritual pressure. Dustless was puzzled, but he could not figure out the reason. He could only sigh inwardly that human genetics were too mysterious. Dustless. Sama, since Miss Shataraza has succeeded, do you still want to continue transforming others? Scarlet O'Hara's tone was respectful. Dustless's status in her eyes was as high as a god. Let me think about it. This is troublesome. Dustless was a little troubled. If he continued to implant his cells in others, would other abilities appear? For example, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, or even Kekkei Genkai like Mokutan. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.